What is up, Irish Breakdown Nation? We are here. It is Keys to Victory time. Brian, it feels like
Brian and T-Dog, baby. Brian and T-Dog. Let's roll, son. It's the only T-Dog reference you're getting from me, partner. That's it. That's it.
Oh, I love it.
I'm ready to go.
I love it. Well,
That's
listen,
how fired
folks,
up I am.
Folks, we are back with another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by FanDuel. And we are finally here. It is Thursday, August 28th. Notre Dame plays football in 3 days, which means today we are talking about keys to victory. We're going to be breaking down, what some of our predictions are. We're going to be talking about, some of our game records. And then afterwards, we're going to be breaking down some of the other major games this week because we get to watch a whole slate of football before we get to watch Notre Dame play on Sunday night. But, Brian, there's a lot to talk about today, man. It feels like ages since we've been able to sit down and go through keys to victory for an actual Notre Dame football game. We are here. The offseason flew by. It's game week. It's time to do some predictions and some keys to victory, bro. I'm ready to go. Let's do this thing.
Man, dude, I'm fired up. Look, Trev, I'm on a roll today. I made my wife and mother-in-law breakfast this morning. It smelled phenomenal. Okay. I didn't eat any, but it smelled great. Our next-door neighbor, little kid, Winston, misses a shot, goes over into my yard. I grab the ball, buckets, nothing but net. We're on a roll here today, man. We're going to do Notre Dame, Miami preview. We're going to talk keys to victory. We're going to have a little bit of a different format this year. We're going to do our keys to victory and our predictions, but we're also going to make some predictions for like game records, which you used to do on Wednesday. We're going to now do that during our prediction show. And Trev, this isn't the only big game. It's the biggest game this weekend, but we're also at the end of the Notre Dame prediction. We're going to talk Ohio State and Texas. We're going to talk Alabama, Florida State. We'll talk Clemson, LSU, and run down some other big-time games there's a lot of, those are the big games this weekend. There's a lot of other really intriguing matchups that Trev and I are going to talk about at the end of that segment too. So, dude, I'm ready to roll, Trev. I am absolutely ready to go. Ready to get this thing going. I got a TV set up behind me, so I'm gonna try not to get distracted. Like, hey, Brian, are you paying attention? Nah, bro, I just watching this game that I got going on in the screen. So I'm fired up. I'm ready to roll. Let's do it. Let's get to it.
Well, hey, man, let's get this thing kicked off. Before we dive into this, be sure to make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. You guys know what to do. You see it scrolling down there, bottom of the screen. Subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. We've been talking about a different content plan for in-season. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in season, and some of the stuff that we're going to be rolling out will be for our premium message boards only inside of the Champions Lounge, so make sure you are subscribed there. But, Brian, let's dive into some keys to victory, and we're two offensive guys. We're two former quarterbacks, and I don't think that there's a better place to start talking keys to victory for Notre Dame, Miami than on the offensive side of the football.
This is the side of the ball, Trev, that ultimately is going to determine how good Notre Dame will be this season. And then, of course, in this game, is it just going to be more of Notre Dame is, look, they're what they were last year. They're a pretty good team. They'll win most of their games, large majority of their games, but they're just not going to be not quite good enough to win it all. They're going to be not quite good enough to go on the road and beat a top 10 team. They're going to beat everybody else. They're going to beat those really good teams they get at home, and they'll beat those not top 10 teams on the road, and they'll get to the playoff and knock off a couple teams. But boy, when they play them big boys like Ohio State and if it's a vintage Georgia team or a vintage Alabama team, the perception being that obviously last year wasn't a vintage Georgia team, all those type of things. They're just not quite good enough then. It's usually because of the offense. And even last year, like the Ohio State game, Trev, it wasn't just, okay, the defense didn't play well. But that's been the storyline. If the defense doesn't play well, they're toast because the offense is not willing to do what they need to do to say, hey, we're going to keep you in this game until you figure it out, which the defense has done for the offense a million times. A&M, hey, we're going to keep the score down until you guys figure out what the heck you need to do. And then Notre Dame goes out there, scores 17 points in the second half, and they pull away and then win the game by 10 at the end. So, those are the things that I'm talking about. No, in a 16-game season, no team is going to be great every week. We always talk about, remember that great, 85 Bears defense. Well, I tend to remember a game that year against the Miami Dolphins on Monday Night Football where that vintage, elite, great defense of Mike Singletary and Richard Dent and Dave Duerson and Wilbur Marshall and and Steve McMahon and all these other Steve McMichael and all these other teams. I remember a game against the Miami Dolphins where they almost gave up 40 in that game. They gave up 28 points in the season opener to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, Trev, you know the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in your lifetime as a Super Bowl champion, playing great defense. That time in my life when I was a kid, the Tampa Bay was garbage, and they went 2-14 that year, and the Bears gave up 28 points in the opener. No matter how good you are, you're going to have a game or two where that part of your team is just not – it's typical, just dominant self. You know, you think of the 2000 Ravens as another example. We could kind of do this all day. I think that it was a 2000 they won the Super Bowl. Yeah, the 2000 Ravens that won the Super Bowl. You look at the postseason, Trev, I mean, they gave up 3, 10, 3, and 7 points in that game. But they gave up 36 in game 2 to the Jacksonville Jaguars in a win. A 7-9 Jacksonville Jaguars team, right? You're going to have those games. But in those games, can the other side of the ball step up and pick you up? And that's what the Notre Dame offense has not been able to do very often. And this is our first chance to see if it is different. If year 2 and under Mike Denbrock is different. If the CJ Carr era is different. If the experience on the offensive line is different. If this receiving core is different. All those things factor into it. That's going to help us determine if, like, this is a new era of Notre Dame football. That doesn't mean I got to go score 40 against Miami, but you at least hope to start to see some signs like, okay, this unit's going to be pretty good. Once they kind of get a little bit under their belt, they're going to be pretty good. And that's what really these keys are going to be about, Trev, is it's about establishing success against Miami. But I think a lot of these are going to also tell us a lot about what this team is going to be moving forward.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's setting the groundwork for what we're hoping to see over the next 13, 14 weeks until the regular season's done. Yeah, I'm in line with you. I'm not expecting Notre Dame to go out and throw for 300 yards and rush for 200 yards. And I'm not expecting CJ Carr on August 31st to look like CJ Carr on November 29th. Again, not upset if I saw November 29th CJ Carr on August 31st, but that's not the expectation. Let's kind of get into the nuts and bolts of this whole thing, Brian, when we start talking keys to victory. What's the first one? I already saw somebody put something in the chat where they believe they kind of figured what you were going to go with. But, Brian, let's kick this thing off. First key to victory for Notre Dame's offense.
I'm so excited to talk. I forget to keep hitting the unmute button. But it's the same thing it always is, and it will remain that way until Notre Dame can prove that they can be this type of team somewhat regularly. And that is, you got to get off to a fast start. Like this is not, even last year, Trev. I'm breaking down the season, right? So I'm doing those videos. I'm going to have a slot fade breakdown video coming up later today. A couple other past game ones coming out tomorrow about that. And you know, I'm going through the whole season. I'm charting down, distance, quarter, hash, personnel, formation, backfield alignment, motion. You've seen the sheet. I sent it to you. You see all the stuff I'm doing. Play direction, drop back type, result, all this stuff. And I'm breaking these games out, and you're like, boy, I forgot how bad or how mediocre this offense was in the first half of games. I mean, they were very mediocre. I mean, they had to wait till the fourth quarter to put Miami, Ohio away. They punted on 2 of their first 4 or 5 possessions against Purdue. Obviously, Northern Illinois game. I mean, they'd have that first drive where they'd score, and then after that, they wouldn't do anything for a while. You know, you go to the Florida State game, it's like they scored late in the first quarter to make it kind of a convincing game. It was 7-7 at the end of the first quarter. They were losing to Georgia Tech early in that game. Georgia Tech goes down and scores. The offense throws a pick. Wasn't really till late second quarter, third quarter, they started to pick things up. Penn State, they're down 3-0 or 10-0, you know, until the last minute of the half. They couldn't get anything going early against Georgia until the last couple minutes of the half, being not just the touchdown after the turnover, but that was preceded by a field goal drive that gave Notre Dame the lead. People forget that. Notre Dame took the lead on Georgia with a field goal drive before the sack. Notre Dame was going to go into halftime with a lead. It just was going to be 6-3 instead of 13-3. At some point in time, you got to say, hey, offense, can y'all help us out a little bit and get off to a fast start? Can you help us put a team away? Can you help us maybe allow us to pin our ears back and maybe go after some people because we jump out to a big lead? Sure would be nice. Big picture, that's important. It's especially important when you're going on the road against a top 10 team with a crowd like this. You can't let this crowd get rabid like you did in 2017. You can't let it get as excited and fired up as it was back then, or as they tend to be in games like this. You got to take them out of the game early, because the one thing that is true about Miami fans in their front runner games, Notre Dame, Florida State, games they actually care about, that because like Duke people are like, wait a minute, that's not a hostile crowd. We've played there twice, and like, yeah, they beat us once and we killed them another time, but like that crowd wasn't that big. Yeah, it's because they don't care about Duke, so they don't show up for that game. They're going to show up for this one and be loud. And if you jump on them early and you can take them out of the game, Trev, they'll get real quiet. And that's what Notre Dame's going to have to do. Start fast, put points on the board early. You know, at least 3 of your first drives of the game have to get points. And at least, to me, 2 of those have to be touchdowns. Like, you've got to be definitely double digits going into halftime, preferably 17-plus points, which allows your defense to kind of get into a rhythm. It allows your defense to maybe not have to be perfect at the beginning of the game against what's going to be a very good offense, experienced coordinator, all those type of things. So I think a fast start's important in this game. And then offensively, a fast start also helps get C.J. Carr into a nice early rhythm as well. If your offense is cold cooking early, that means CJ's getting into a groove, even if he's just throwing under screens, throwing quick game, hitting a couple RPOs, throwing some slips. I don't care what it is if you're scoring early, that means he's doing whatever you're asking him to do and doing it well enough for your offense to move. And that takes some pressure off him. It lowers the burden on him a little bit. Like, okay, I've taken a couple hits. I've got out. I got my feet wet, and we're going out there and we're scoring points, and we're going to be okay. And then he can settle down. The offense can say, okay, yeah, we had faith in him, but it was faith unseen to a degree. Now it's seen, and I think all those things are positive for this team, all for the season as a whole, but especially in this environment in this game. And then look, if it's as rainy as we think it's going to be, you get Miami behind and force them to start having to throw the football a lot more, that's going to be of a great benefit to your football team, because that's when more mistakes will happen defensively. But your offense has to do its job to get you into that position.
Well, there's been a lot of attention going to C.J. Carr making his first start, understandably so. Redshirt freshman. It's the first time Notre Dame's going with a homegrown guy since 2022. And you have to start fast for all of those reasons, help get him in a rhythm. But this is also Chris Ash's first game calling a defense in college since he was at Texas. It's his first time calling a defensive game at Notre Dame. It's about playing complementary football. I personally wouldn't feel as comfortable just relying on the defense to just hold serve and hold serve and hold serve until Notre Dame's offense finally starts to figure it out, like we saw last year, at the end of the first quarter, start of the second quarter, or some cases middle through the second quarter. I mean, Brian, I'm sure that if we look at last year, even though they played 16 games, we can probably count on one hand how many times they scored on their opening possession of the game.
Notre Dame?
Yeah.
What's funny is they actually score. Actually, Trev, I know the impression, but that's actually not correct. They actually scored on a lot of their first possessions. The problem is they wouldn't do anything after that. They scored in their first possession against A&M. They scored on the first possession of Northern Illinois, first possession against Purdue. I don't think they scored on the first possession against Miami. We'll have to go back and check on that. First possession against Louisville, not Stanford, not Georgia Tech. First possession against Navy, first possession against Army, first possession against Florida State, first possession against USC, first possession against Indiana, first possession against Ohio State. The perception that they didn't is accurate because they would be so mediocre after that you almost forget that they actually did go down and score on their first drive in a lot of games.
Yeah. I guess I was saying,
like, that would be it in the first half.
Yeah.
Like the Florida State game, Trev, is a perfect example of what you're talking about, because you and I have talked about how just kind of ugly that game was for Notre Dame. And that first half of that game was just like, guys, what is going on right now? Like, why are you not playing better than this? This is kind of ugly football. But, they went down, Trev, and scored on their first drive of the game. They just didn't do a whole lot after that. That was the problem, that's what made that season that so frustrating, is that they would get those quick starts. Because we started talking during the season like, Okay, yeah, great. They're getting that first score, but that's not starting fast. Starting fast isn't just one possession.
That's a good point.
Because 7-0 is great to start the game off with, but if it's still 7-3 midway through the second quarter, you didn't start fast. Your defense is doing its part, but you're not starting fast. And so, yeah, I definitely get the perception, Trev, for sure. And part of the reason that I remember this again is just because I was just doing the breakdowns again this past couple weeks. So it's like it's a little bit more fresh on my mind.
Sure.
But yeah, it was frustrating to watch because they would get that first score and then just stall. And you're just like, okay, this isn't a fast start. Like the Ohio State game, that's a perfect example of how the season went for Notre Dame last year. First drive, brilliant, thing of beauty. You're like, wow, what an impressive drive. After that, not a whole lot good going on in that game. So it was definitely a frustrating performance. And by the way, Notre Dame did, in fact, punt on their first 3 drives against Miami of Ohio. So that was the first time last season that they didn't score on their first drive.
Lordy. That game was ugly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
that game was ugly. Well, Brian, let's talk about what goes into a fast start, because how we like to do things when we're breaking down keys to victory is one kind of leads into the next. And as exciting as Jeremiah Love is, and as exciting as it is Notre Dame is having a new starting quarterback and all the portal guys that they brought in at receiver, combined with Greathouse coming back, this is going to be a game that I believe that will kind of be one up front. And our second key to victory for Notre Dame is talking about controlling the line of scrimmage, Brian, because that's going to be a huge factor in this game.
I mean, Trev, dude, you there, and this means a lot of different things. This isn't just about being physical and taking the fight to them. This is about a lot of different things. Part of it is, however, it's about the mindset of the game. It's about taking the fight to Miami, punching them in the mouth in a football way right away, letting them know, like, hey, guys, you haven't seen anything like us. Because Miami is a team with, when you're learning a new system, kind of like what Notre Dame is, when you come out that first game, you're full of belief, you're full of confidence, and all of a sudden the team kind of takes your soul a little bit. Things aren't working. And all of a sudden you're like, well, maybe this isn't, maybe how it's going to go. So then you come in and you say, okay, do I have that same belief? We're getting our tails whipped right now. Do I have that same belief and everything? And then you see that all the time. You jump on a team early and it just snowballs. I mean, USC came into that 2017 game. We always talk about the Notre Dame Miami game, but I look back to the USC game in 2017, where early in that game, Notre Dame just imposed its will physically on USC. And I've joked about it, like by the third, fourth quarter, I mean, USC was literally like no mas. There was a play in that game where the first starters were still in the game, and Quentin Nelson went to down block on Rasheem Green, who was a 5-star and a third-round draft pick, and he literally just turns his back to Quentin Nelson and just gets driven. I mean, I don't want to get hit anymore. Like this is a team that was ranked they were like 7-1. They were a borderline top 10 team. Finished that year with like 11 wins, I believe, and just they wanted no more part of that. And I'm not saying that Notre Dame is going to do that. But it's more so that's the mindset, the mentality of physicality that you have to have. And then practically speaking, the impact that it has, Trevor, is it allows you to establish the run game, especially on early downs. You want to help a young quarterback, put him in a lot of second and shorts, a lot of third and shorts where he doesn't have to hit a backside dig route just to move the chains. You know, he doesn't have to try to hit a cover 2 hole throw just to convert a third down. Put him in those things. Hey, I'll just take this little check down to Jeremiah Love or this little crossing route to Jordan Faison, and he can catch it for 4 yards and boop, move the chains. That's a great pressure reducer for a young quarterback when you can come out there and have that early down success. And the more you can just take the fight to Miami with the run game, if you're able to do that, then that's less pressure on CJ Carr to have to go win the game with his arm. Now that forces also Miami to put more resources into the box, which then makes his downfield reads a little easier and make some of those windows a little bigger. And it just takes a lot of pressure off of him. And the other part about, Trev, really dominating the line, the control, I didn't say dominate, it's control the line of scrimmage, is it's also pass pro. And pass pro doesn't have to be dominance. Pass pro just has to be do your job. That's it. That's all pass pro has to be. Just do your job. Just get a body on a body and do what you're taught to do. Do what you know you're supposed to do, because if CJ Carr gets time to throw, he'll make some plays. He's got a big-time arm. We've talked about this for 3 years now. You just got to make sure that you're doing the things that you need to do and playing your game, establish the line of scrimmage, run the ball, create those creases, and give CJ Carr time to play. Because, Trev, as we pointed out last year, this is also true in the playoffs. If you just get a body on a body, Notre Dame's skill players are going to make plays. They're going to find the crease. They're going to make plays. A&M found that out last year. USC found that out last year. Georgia Tech found that out last year. Even Georgia found that out last year. I mean, you had the penalty on Jaden Greathouse that negated the long run by Greathouse. You had Riley Leonard with his backside cut on a counter play that set up Notre Dame's, I think, first field goal or second field goal of that game. You know, the 98-yard touchdown run. I mean, everybody talks about what a great run by Jeremiah. All that he did great was read it and be fast. I mean, he only ran straight through the hole and then outran everybody. That was dominance up front. That was Anthony Knapp and Cooper Flanagan wrecking people. Get a body on a body in this offensive line, and these running backs will feast. If you don't, then it's going to be a lot tougher for you. And so that's why key number 2 is control the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, absolutely. It all starts up front, and that's something that we've talked about all offseason long. It's something that Notre Dame is going to have to do a solid job of because Miami does have a stout front four. And we've been talking about how, hey, look, we're not going to have to wait long. There's a reason why when we were doing all the position previews and the breakdowns, there was a portion in there where we talked about, you know, what are the games to watch? Almost every single position we talked about the Miami and Texas A&M game. So this is going to be a big one for Notre Dame's offensive line. Next key, Brian. Notre Dame is going to have to do a good job of keeping Miami on their heels. Now, I want you to dive into that a little bit, man, because that can be pretty broad. And so are you talking in terms of play calling, tempo? What are you?
All of it. Look, what you don't want to do is just come out and you're going to line up in a 2x2 or a 3x1 out of 11 personnel, same look every time, and you're running inside zone or duo every play, and then when you're going to run a different formation, you know, offset back, you're running duo or inside zone. When you have a pistol set, you're running mid zone to the tight end. Like, it's very predictable, and it's just that mindset of like, look, there's having a mindset of we're going to take the fight to you, and then there's the mindset of just like, dude, you're so predictable. You're making it easier for them. I don't think Mike Denbrock's that kind of play caller over the years, but any coaching staff can come into a game with a first-time quarterback and say, hey, let's keep it simple. Well, my idea of keeping it simple is you only have 4 or 5 run calls. You only have 12 to 15 pass calls. That's not a lot, but you do those things out of 40, 50 different looks and different movement. So, you know, start with do pre-snap shifts, you know, start with tight ends here, shift over there. I broke down one of the plays I broke down in the mid-zone breakdown was a play where they were in 12 personnel and they started to the left of the line. They both shifted to the right. Then the other tight end motions back. They run away from where they shifted to. Jeremiah Love creases it for a 39-yard touchdown. Like, do some of that stuff. You think of the Louisville game last year, and this also happened again. What was the other game it happened against? It happened against Louisville, happened against Purdue. There was the Penn State game it happened as well, but where they would do like a little zip motion, get the DBs communicating and then snap mid motion and then do like a post snap switch. They did this on a slot fade against Louisville where they motioned Jaden Harrison down. He runs and then, they motioned, I think it was Jordan Faison down. Maybe it's Chris Mitchell. He runs a pivot route. And then Jaden Harrison does like a little stutter and then runs a slot fade. Well, they got caught in communication. They both ran to the pivot. Jaden Harrison runs behind him. That happened against Purdue. The play against Penn State, they ran like a little zip motion. Jordan Faison runs across. Jaden Greathouse puts a move on him. They're all going towards the cross by Jordan Faison. He runs the route outside. You know, just stuff where you're doing things to create communication, create talking, to create, you know, decisions having to be made right at the snap by a Miami defense that's in its first game under new coordinator. If you just line up and let them get the calls made and let them get up and let them see what you're doing, then, you know, that's gonna kind of allow them to pin their ears back and go. That's part of it. Another part of it, Trevor, is play calling. If Ruben Bain and Missador and the blitzing linebackers and Justin Scott know that CJ Carr is going to be 7 to 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage on every single play, then it gets a little bit easier to get after them. You know, part of this is, hey, they're not afraid of our quarterback run, so they're just going to crash off the edge. They're going to have their defensive linemen crash. They're going to have their nickels crash. That's one thing that Corey Heatherman did a lot at times last year. So he'll blitz the nickel. He'll blitz the linebacker off the edge. He'll bring a safety down and blitz them. Have some answers for that. Like do some bootlegs, do some stuff under gun or under center where you're getting him out of the pocket. Do some sprint outs. Do some, hey, you're crashing here. We're going to sprint out away from it, getting you thinking we're afraid of him. We're going to throw a little throwback screen behind it. Because what did Mike Denbrock do the play after? He did a little zip motion slot, post-snap switch slot fade against Louisville. Next play, sprint out to the right, throwback pass to Jeremiah Love for the score. They were sitting on both of those plays the whole game until they needed them. You saw it because it was funny. We talked about how against this Louisville defense, I think something like some kind of screen to the back. Remember we talked about that could be huge. And then they pull it out. Well, if I saw it, Mike Denbrock saw it. You know what I mean? Like, dude's been, like there's a reason I'm here and he's there. Like he saw it, but it's about calling it at the right time. Like Al Borges talked about doing this against Notre Dame in 2011. He's like, look, we knew we could hit this wheel route, but we were waiting on the moment when we needed it. Mike Norvell talked about that in 2014 against Notre Dame. Like we knew we had this formation where we could get a back against a defensive lineman. We were up 34-3. We didn't need it yet, and then we finally needed it, and we pulled it out of our back pocket. That's kind of what Mike Denbrock did with those two plays against Louisville. They didn't need them because they were up 2 touchdowns almost the whole game, and then Louisville makes it a 24-17 game. Now you need to go down and put this thing away. Back-to-back plays that they were sitting on, and then boom, game's basically over. But stuff like that can be really effective in a game like this, where it's going to make it hard for Miami to just pin their ears back and say, go attack the running backs. It could also be, Trev, some 2-back stuff. Yeah. Hey, we want to get our run game going. So let's go 20 personnel or 21 personnel. Then we're going to go ahead and a little motion number 4 outside. Maybe first time throw him a little screen just to get you thinking the ball is coming out to him. Next couple times we do it, we motion him out. We're going to run inside. And now we've got Jadarian Price with some creases to run through. Like all that type of stuff, Trev, is what a good coordinator can do and what Mike Denbrock can do and has done to get the other team saying, like, okay, we can't just pin our ears back and say we're going to stop the zone or we're going to stop the run game, because every time we think that they're going to do this, they come out and hit us with this. And, we were doing this, they show this tendency, and they came out, ran a bootleg throwback, and then we don't have anybody covering that guy. That kind of stuff is, you don't do it every time, but it's like enough of that. And then all of a sudden Miami's thinking, now when you run right at them, now they're on their heels and boom. Now all of a sudden duo and inside zone is just gashing them.
Well, it goes back to what you and I were talking about yesterday of this offense remaining aggressive. Aggressive doesn't mean you're running 4 verts and double posts every other play to keep a team on their heels. It's diversity in your play calls. It's switching up the tempo. Don't make the mistake of what Clemson made in 2022 and line up across Miami and just say, hey, we think our dudes are better than your dudes. We're going to run our base offense. Let's see you stop inside zone 13 times. Let's see you stop mid zone 13 times. Look, let's call a spade here. There's teams on the schedule that you can get away with that against. There are. Notre Dame has, I believe, to be the best roster in the country. Miami's not one of those teams that you can line up and just say, hey, you guys know what's coming, but we're so good that you can't stop it. Maybe at some point they get to that stage, but switch up your tempo, switch up your plan of attack to your point, switch up how you approach attacking different players to your point. If they crash down hard off the edge, yes. Is CJ Carr going to be in a position where every single time, like Riley Leonard would, is he going to pull it and run for 35? No. But could he pull it and move the sticks? Yes. Could he pull it on an RPO and hit Eli Raridon on a little slide route? Absolutely. Set something up, build a backside post behind that to Will Pauling. He's going to be streaking free across if the safety comes down and crashes. So there's going to be a lot of different things that they can do. And all of this kind of feeds into what our final key to victory is for this offense. And it's don't be conservative. That also goes back to what we talked about yesterday. Yes, there's likely going to be scripted plays. And yes, the identity for Notre Dame is run the ball and stop the run. But we started this segment, Brian, talking about how Notre Dame's offense last year, that philosophy could only get them so far. And how far that got them was scoring on the majority of your opening drives. And then you went on a drought for a quarter to a quarter and a half.
Yeah.
Maintain an identity. Look to put up as many points on the scoreboard as you can. Look to be aggressive vertically and horizontally on the field, because that's something Marcus Freeman talked about But then we didn't really see that come to fruition for a handful of different reasons last season. You have, what are the dimensions? 120 to 53 and a third for a football field. Use that to your advantage. Continue to be aggressive and don't be conservative overall with your game plan just because you have a redshirt freshman starting at quarterback. That's going to be huge on Sunday.
Yeah, look, Trev, it's because obviously, so like you said, this is the final key to victory for Notre Dame. You don't have to there's a happy medium between, like Mike Denbrock talked about this last night. We're not going to put more on him than he can handle. That doesn't mean you come out in 12 personnel, run inside zone, outside zone, duo, and counter all game, and then let him run a couple, bootleg underthrows and some hitch routes, and that's all you do. And you're snapping the ball with 2 seconds left on the clock every time. Like that. That's not putting more on the court. That's conservative. I'm also not saying with a redshirt freshman quarterback who's never thrown a meaningful pass that you come out and go empty and push the tempo at times, which is another thing you can do to get Miami on your heels, is push the tempo, like you talked about yesterday, Trev. But it's like it's find that happy medium, and at times it's okay on this possession. We're backed up on our own 8. We're going to try to run the ball out of here and maybe pick up a first down. If not, we're going to give our punter a little bit of room and play field position with our great defense. We're not going to ask a freshman quarterback to drop back an empty personnel and have to go against this blitz at our own 8-yard line on 3rd and 4. I mean, there's you might not have done that with Riley Leonard last year. With Riley, you might have gone empty because, hey, if he doesn't have a lane to throw, he can take off and run and move the chains that way. That's different than a game plan like we saw, which we were so frustrated with last year against a Northern Illinois, against a Miami of Ohio. And that's what was frustrating at times, is like, dude, don't be that. Find that happy medium. And if you can do that, then I think this offense is going to be fine, as long as those other things are going well. I just my biggest concern in this game is that they come out and get very conservative, not a lot of tempo. And when I mean tempo, I don't even mean like, I should say, let's say pace, not tempo, because tempo has obviously a clear meaning in football, but more so you're just lining up and you don't want to do a lot of motions and shifts because you're afraid it might confuse your quarterback. So you just line up and you're just snapping the ball at 5 seconds left, and Miami's getting all their checks in. They're getting all their communication in. You're not putting any stressors on them because you don't want to stress out your quarterback. Like, you do stuff like that, that's how Miami's going to shut you down. And so I think that's going to be my thing, Trev, is coming out and just playing with some pace, being aggressive but smart. Those two things can go together. Like I said, aggressive isn't dropping back and throwing 4 verts every play, throwing 13 post routes. It's pick your shots, but you can be aggressive with your run game, depending on how you do it with motions and shifts and tempo and misdirection and things like that. Aggressiveness doesn't mean throwing the ball 20 yards down the field. Aggressiveness means taking the fight to the other team. And you can do that in ways that also don't put a million things on your redshirt freshman quarterback. And that's going to be the key.
Agreed. Well, listen, man, here's the good news. FanDuel right now, they think that Notre Dame is going to put up at least 25.5 points. That's what the over-under is set at for Notre Dame's total points for the game. So good news is they do think that they're going to score more points than what they did in the season opener last year, and that is with a redshirt freshman at quarterback, and that is with playing a higher-ranked opponent. And so we're going to see all of that come to fruition.
Yeah. Just real quick, too, Trev. I mean, this isn't a key to victory. This is a no-brainer, but like there also requires a level of execution that is required from this. I mean,
oh yeah,
you and I were talking before the show against A&M. Like A&M, they didn't play that well against A&M last year. No, Sean Davis and I were talking about this last night. They didn't play well against A&M. They played hard against A&M last year. They didn't play well. I mean, there was a play I broke down on the board. You remember when I did this play where they ran a burst corner with Bo Collins, and the corner just falls down. I mean, that's the read. The read was perfectly set up. It was man coverage. If he stays there, he's got time. He throws it to Bo, and Bo's got a 50-yard touchdown. He went away from Bo and threw a backside dig cut to Chris Mitchell. Chris Mitchell was 5 yards in front of the DB. If Riley hits him in stride, he's got to make one guy miss, and it's 6. And Riley threw it into the ground. It's like, dude, you had 2 potential touchdowns on this play, and it was an incomplete pass. There was a lot of plays like that last year in that opener, and where I thought Notre Dame was trying to be aggressive. There's a play early in the game. They ran a slot fade to Jeremiah Love, and the safety was flat-footing, Trevor. And if a safety's flat-footing on slot fade, it's a touchdown. If you throw the ball out in front, Riley wasn't patient enough. Because we talked, he was still getting comfortable in the system. Trevor, when you look at it, yes, Riley Leonard had way more experience as a quarterback than CJ Carr, but Riley Leonard was a month into the system basically last year in the opener. CJ Carr is going into his second year in the system. And so I think that's where I'm coming from with it, Trevor, is like, yeah, all these things are great. Then at the end of the day, you still got to execute. And they didn't execute very well against, you had the big run by Jeremiah or Jadarian Price that gets called back because of a senseless holding penalty that's 5 yards behind the back. Like, stuff like that was frustrating because when you break the game down, you're like, dude, they should have won this game by 10 to 17 points, but in a different way. Or A&M scores last to make it 10 points, not Notre Dame pulls away. They should have won that game more convincingly. They just didn't execute very well. And a game that I thought Mike Denbrock was relatively aggressive coming out. I mean, ran a jet sweep early, running screens. They were hitting slot fades to Jeremiah Love. Just didn't execute. You got to execute a little bit as well. And so I think that's you talk about the FanDuel numbers. If you execute, I think you get to those numbers. If you miss those opportunities, you're not going to have a plethora of – I watched Three Amigos the other day. You're not going to have a plethora of opportunities against a team like Miami. You're going to get about 6 or 7 big play opportunities. You got to hit half of them, at least half of them. And if you do that, you'll win this game and you'll look like a top 10 team doing it.
Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for Keys to Victory on offense. Don't go anywhere. We still have a lot to break down. We're getting ready to switch gears to the defensive side of the ball, but you guys know what to do before we get there. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, Brian was talking about it earlier. He's putting up some awesome video breakdowns on the message board, but that's only for the premium message board subscribers at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So make sure you check that out in the Champions Lounge. Got to be a premium message board subscriber to have those available to you. So check it out, boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 2 of today's show on the Irish Breakdown podcast here, brought to you by FanDuel, we are going to be talking about keys to victory for the defensive side of the ball. And this one is an interesting topic.
Good on good, baby.
Good on good, man. We're talking about, the high-powered Miami offense versus the stout, athletic, and long Notre Dame defense. Kind of shades of what this conversation was in 1988 in that historic rivalry game. But let's talk about this, Brian. Notre Dame is breaking in a new defensive coordinator, but they return all their position coaches. There's been a lot of attention on this side of the ball for Notre Dame, and this is what carried them for the brunt of their 2024 run. Then on the flip side of the coin, you have Miami, a team last year that led the country with 43.9 points per game. They led the country in passing yards per game. Their quarterback, Cam Ward, was the #1 overall draft pick in the NFL this past draft. And so good on good. You have these two powerhouse programs, these two powerhouse side of the balls kind of meeting head on Sunday night. When you start talking keys to victory for Notre Dame's defense, where do you start?
This is a little bit of outside the keys, but I'm going to give a little extra key here, Trev, is the number one biggest thing is I want them to be really physical in this game. Like, I want to see Notre Dame come out and pads are popping. Like again, this is take that fight to Miami. Be the physical team. Fly to the ball. I mean, I've heard things from different sources that are at practices, and I talk to a lot of different people that practices, and they're just like, dude, if they weren't doing it against Price and Love, and like Greathouse and Faison, like guys that we know can run, I might be like, I don't think the offense is going to be that good. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, there's plays where it's like, it looks like the offense has the edge. And then all of a sudden just a defender just chases them down to the sideline for like a 2-yard gain. And that's where it was like, but it's being done to Jeremiah Love. It's being done to Jadarian Price. Guys that we know no one else can run with. And because of what we saw them do. And so that's the big thing to me, Travis. I want to see this defense. Chris Ash said something yesterday. They asked him what he's looking for in the defense, and he's like, he wants guys to, I think it was like play smart, like run to the ball, and I forget and get the ball. But it was just like, this is what we've heard people say about Chris Ash's defense at Ohio State. It wasn't super, super complex. It wasn't, let me show how smart I am. It was, everybody knows what to do, and they do it 100 miles an hour, and they do it sound. Like that, just big picture, I want to see that from this defense. Now, getting this first specific one, Trev, and I'll kick it to you and let you break this one down because I know this is something that you and I have talked a lot about how important this is in the game. Key number one is you've got to slow down the Miami ground game, not completely shut it down, 30 carries for 55 yards, but you got to slow it down, win on early downs, and keep them from really establishing the ground attack in this game. That's key number one.
Yeah, this is the known commodity for Miami's offense. For as much of a lethal downfield passing attack they had last year with Cam Ward and Xavier Restrepo and Isaiah Horton and all those guys, they're gone. But what returns? A stout offensive line and two really good running backs in Mark Fletcher and Jordan Lyle. Oh, and they also picked up North Dakota State's running back Shamar Brown, who was also an electric playmaker, rushed for over 1,000 yards last year. Look, there was a pattern last season with Notre Dame. In games that were close and games that they lost, they were not able to dominate the line of scrimmage in the run game. They gave up way too much. I don't want to go and rehash what happened against Northern Illinois, but Ontario Brown, somebody who I believe, Brian, was on your preseason all-opponent team.
Second team. Yep.
Second team last season.
Jamal Haynes was my first team. Ontario Brown was my second team all guy. Yep.
I remember listening to that episode. I was like, really, the Northern Illinois guy? Okay. And then I popped in some film and I was like, okay, yeah, the Northern Illinois guy.
This is why I listen to Brian. This is why I listen to Brian. He's right.
Okay. Makes sense. That makes sense.
Seriously, like they must play some garbage running backs this year. If you have the Northern Illinois guy on your second team, like, nope, this guy's really good.
Initially, that's what I thought. I was like, man, Florida State's running back's about to be trash. USC's running back's about to be trash. Yeah. But
nope.
Sure wasn't.
Shit.
Yeah.
They found that out firsthand in
that
that second game. Yes, they did.
They sure did, man. But point being, in the games that Notre Dame played close and still won or ended up losing last season, teams were able to establish a line of scrimmage. Look at Texas A&M. Le'Veon Moss and that Texas A&M offense started to lean on Notre Dame's defense a little bit. That's why that game was pretty close in the second half. You start to really, that's why the game was close throughout. They lost to Northern Illinois because of that. Louisville, I understand that it was part of the philosophy to give up some things on the ground, but Notre Dame was never really able to pull away because of the success they had on the ground. You look at what happened in the playoffs.
And by the way, that statistic is very misleading. They only rushed for 131 yards that game. They had a minus 40 yard play on a punt that took away from their rushing yards, which I still think is stupid. Quarterback sacks, kneels, and special teams plays should not count against your rushing totals. It should count against your total yards, but that's a different conversation for a different day. But to your point, they technically had over 170 rushing yards because they also had a couple sacks that lost yards. They ran the ball well in that game, to your point.
Yep, and then we all know what happened in the last two games of the postseason. Penn State and Ohio State both combined for over 400 rushing yards against Notre Dame's defense. One of them they were able to walk away with a victory on because I believe that Notre Dame had the better roster than Penn State last season, top to bottom. And then you find yourself in a similar situation against Ohio State, and they had the better horses that day. And so why is it important that Notre Dame stops the run today? Well, if you can make any team one-dimensional, especially a team like Miami, whose identity is upping the tempo and pushing the ball down the field and living within Shannon Dawson's system, if they're not able to run behind it, that's going to put Carson Beck, who's in a new offense, throwing to a handful of different new receivers in an interesting bind. You're also playing into the strength of Notre Dame's defense. I will feel a lot better if Miami is in a position where they have to throw the ball against a Leonard Moore, a Christian Gray, and a Don Schuler, an athletic linebacking core, and a host of rotating safeties than I am if they're just able to kind of methodically move the ball down the field, 4-yard gain, 6-yard gain, 10-yard gain, 4-yard gain. Establishing the line of scrimmage and stopping the run is imperative and absolutely the number one key to success for Notre Dame's defense Sunday night.
It is. I mean, look, if the same thing is, look, I don't care if it's a redshirt freshman quarterback or a senior quarterback that everybody thinks is a first-round draft pick. If you're constantly in a lot of second and longs and third and medium to longs, especially third and longs, where you're behind the sticks and they know you're throwing, it makes life a lot tougher. And that's true for anybody. I mean, heck, Peyton Manning's one of the greatest ever do it. That's what got them in so many problems when they were going against, the Patriots all those years when they were having early in his career when they were having some of those issues. Is like you're getting into third and long, Patriots just pinning the ears back. Edgerrin James and Marshall Faulk, depending on what era we're talking about, weren't the same factors because you're fine. If you want to run it on 3rd and 9, go for it. You know what I mean? At your own 25, go for it. And it makes it hard. And the next key, Trev, is an extension of this. I feel like when you can slow down the run, it then makes it easier for you to then keep going and pressuring the quarterback. And that's key number 2, Trev, is they've got to get to Carson Beck early and often.
Absolutely. I mean, look, we're talking about a quarterback that, despite all of his experiences, he regressed in the efficiency categories last season, in every major efficiency category. His completion percentage went down about 6 points. He doubled the amount of interceptions. His yards per attempt went down. We're talking about a quarterback who, with another year of experience, went from 6 interceptions in 2023 to 12 interceptions in 2024. Why did that happen? And no, I don't think it's because he just sucks. I don't think Carson Beck sucks. But you have to you have to seek to understand why these things happen. And it's because the teams that had success turning the ball over on Carson Beck were also able to get in his face a lot. He had 3 interceptions against Alabama. He had 3 interceptions against Texas. He had a handful of interceptions against Mississippi State. He turned the ball over against Ole Miss. What did those teams have in common when you go back and look at the numbers, Brian? They were able to generate pressure on Carson Beck. He's an athletic kid, but he's not a runner. He is by far a pocket passer first. And he's somebody that, when he does get off schedule, opposite of what Cam Ward was able to do last season, Carson Beck panics a little bit. He tends to start forcing passes. What's he going to be doing that against? He's going to start forcing passes against the number 1 defense in 2024 in terms of turnovers gained. But in order to do that, in order to get him off schedule, you have to be able to generate a pass rush. A lot of these keys to victory are going to be surrounded around the defensive line in the run game and in the pass game, to your point, Brian. And so if Carson Beck is able to sit back and have the time that he needs to go through a read progression and get in a rhythm, then he's going to be what Miami fans have made him out to be. In this, he's going to be a first-round draft pick, and that Miami's going to go undefeated, and nobody's going to touch this offense, and they're not even going to miss Cam Ward. They're going to have to do a good job of getting pressure in his face. And I'll take it a step further. Ideally, they get pressure in his face with the front 4. Because we've seen Notre Dame's defense before in the past having to start sending 1 linebacker and 2 linebackers, and then they'll start sending the nickel off the edge. If you can get home with your front 4, that is going to bode extremely well for Notre Dame's defense. Extremely well.
As I said, Trev, this isn't even necessarily a Carson Beck thing. Your points about Carson Beck are spot on, but it's also just sort of a quarterback thing in general. But when you have a quarterback that is prone to, hey, look, I'm a good player, but if I get behind or if I get pressured, I'm gonna make unsound football plays. It's not even so much about, he gets rattled or anything like that. It's just that he does unsound things. He does things that you're like, dude, you should not have been doing that. Like, I don't understand why you thought that was the smart thing to do. I just think sometimes what happens to a lot of quarterbacks is just his brain speeds up a little bit. And he's just not nearly as effective. And, people talk about how good he was 2 years ago as a quarterback and some of the big games, and he absolutely was. If you go back to his first year as a starter and you look at what he did against ranked teams, he was very good. Against Kentucky, he was 28 of 35 for 389 yards, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Ole Miss, 21 of 32, 254, 2 TDs and a pick. That was against Missouri. Ole Miss, 18 of 25 for 306, 2 touchdowns and a pick. Tennessee on the road, 24 of 30. 298 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And then against Alabama in the SEC title game, he goes 21 of 29 for 243 yards, no touchdowns, and no picks. I don't really count the Florida State game. And then this past year, however, it's a different story. He's pretty good against Clemson in the second half. He wasn't very good in the first half, put up some good numbers. Then against Alabama, he went 27 of 50 for 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, but threw 3 picks. And he threw for that many yards because they had to. They were down 28-0. And then all they were going to do was throw the football. And then he comes out against Texas, goes 23 of 41 for 175 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 picks. He's the primary reason Texas started making a comeback in that game. with some of his interceptions in that game. Against Ole Miss, he goes 20 of 31 for 186 yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. Against Tennessee, he was very good, 25 of 40, 347, 2 touchdowns, no picks. And then against Texas, he only went 7 of 13 for 56 yards and no touchdowns and no picks in the first half. Think about those numbers in a half. In a game and a half against Texas, he was really bad. And what's the difference? Well, he didn't have, and I think this is relevant to the Miami game, he didn't have Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey to throw to anymore. Now, all of a sudden, a guy that looked like a world beater the year before looks like a very, kind of solid, but that's it quarterback who turns the ball over a lot. Well, he didn't have a lot of good weapons. Well, Cam's best weapon last year just was undrafted free agent who just got cut by the Titans. Didn't even make the team. Undrafted free agent, didn't make the team. Bo Collins made the Giants. He was an undrafted free. He made the Giants, which, by the way, awesome for Bo. Had a great, from what I read, had a great spring or fall camp for the Giants and great training camp for the Giants. So super happy for Bo. Great kid. But that's your stud that Cam Morton's throwing to. I'm sorry, Georgia didn't have a bunch of bums last year. They were made scapegoats at times, and they did have their fair share of drops, but they were made scapegoats at times as well for a quarterback that struggled. And so now he's in a new system. He's in an air raid system. That was more of a pro-style system. He's got to make that adjustment. There's going to be receivers he's still getting to know. If you let him sit back and get comfortable, it's not going to take long for him to get into a groove and pick you apart. If you can get after him the way that teams did last year, the way that Texas did, the way that both games, the way that Georgia Tech did early in that game before he ripped them up in the second half. If you can do it the way that Ole Miss did, if you can do it again, the way that Alabama did in the first half of that game before they kind of called off the dogs a little bit, then you're going to have success against him, and you're not only going to cause him to miss throws, but some of those misses are going to end up falling in your hands. But if you let him get comfortable, it's going to be a long day for your defense because he's got talented receivers in Miami. They're just guys he had. They're going to be a lot more dangerous throwing the football by the time they get to Florida than they should be against Notre Dame, just because of time together. And we saw that last year at Notre Dame of how long it took Riley Leonard, who also missed the spring, to get comfortable. Now, yes, Carson Beck's a better thrower than Riley Leonard, but it's not just that he's a better thrower. It's that cohesion that goes into playing together, knowing where this guy's going to be, knowing how quickly this guy gets out of his breaks. This guy gets out of his breaks a second later than that guy gets out of his breaks. That's going to have to impact when I throw this football. Yep. I think those are all part of it. And the less time he has to set his feet and be comfortable and go through his progressions, the more effective you're going to be.
Well, Brian, I'll kind of ping pong this back to you. This kind of ties into the third key to victory that we have for this Notre Dame defense. Let's talk a little bit about the unit that Carson Beck will be passing against. In this Notre Dame secondary, you and I are of the belief that this is one of the top secondaries in the country. I think that Notre Dame is home to the best cornerback duo returning in college football this season. But in order for them to have success against Miami, which you called it an air raid offense, which I agree with completely, they have to be disciplined and aggressive in coverage. And that's that's an interesting line to walk, Brian, when you think about it.
Yes, it is, because you can run two risks against a Shannon Dawson-led offense. And it's an air raid offense, but Shannon Dawson is more from I'm trying to think of the right way to there's like two types of air raids. There's the air raid that is just like the Mike Leach, we're just going to throw it all over the field. Running is sort of an afterthought, and it's a change up. And then there's the air raid. Lincoln Riley was this way at Oklahoma, not so much at USC. It's it's like Phil Longo was like this at North Carolina early on, then went away from it, which is what I think hurt them. But you remember that 2020 North Carolina team that had Sam Howell and Josh Downs and just that great receiving core. They also had 2,000-yard running backs that year, and Javonte Williams and Michael Carter. And you go back and look at those great Oklahoma offenses with Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. What a lot of people forget is those teams ran the football. They were not just, sit back and throw it a million times. Yes, their quarterbacks were great. I mean, they were absolutely great quarterbacks and at Oklahoma during that stretch. I mean, 2019, their last playoff team with Jalen Hurts, Obviously, he was threw for 3,800 yards that year and 32 touchdowns. They ran for 240 yards in 2018. Their starting quarterback, Kyler Murray, passed for 4,361 yards and 42 touchdowns. They also ran for 247 yards a game. In 2017, Baker Mayfield has a brilliant year, 4,627 yards, 43 touchdowns. That's pretty darn good. They also ran for 217 yards a game. 2016, same kind of deal. Baker Mayfield throws for 3,965 yards and 40 touchdowns, only 8 picks. But that year they also rushed for 236.8 yards per game and had 2,000-yard running backs. Like, Shannon Dawson is more from that school than he is from the Mike Leach school, but he's not all the way there to like 240 game. He's kind of like in that nice in the middle balance of what he's been. But I think early this season, he's going to lean more to running the ball a little bit more. But the point is, being that air raid guy, he is great about doing a couple things. We saw this last year, creating ISOs, using motions and knowing soft spots and coverages and knowing how I can line up this way and get this shift to say we're going to get their nickel in an ISO against. I was watching the Louisville game earlier. They had a great third down play that went for a touchdown. They called it back because of an offensive penalty, but it was a great play design where they just get in this third long. They get Xavier Restrepo matched up against the Louisville nickel. So your best receiver against their third best cover guy beats him across the middle. He uses the official as a pick, which is really smart. Just get the ball out in space and then go let him do something with it. He's great at doing those ISO routes. He does a really nice job of creating layers in your pass game that put pressure on covered situations. And the longer a play goes on, the more effective it is. So against this defense, you've got to do two things. Number one, you need great discipline. And what happened on that Restrepo play was the backside linebackers weren't patient, and they started running with things. He came late on a cross, backers were gone. And then he used the ref as a pick to get open and catch the ball. Discipline is key. Be smart. Be patient. Do what you're taught to do. Don't let all the post-snap switching and high lows and all that kind of stuff get you out of your game. Do what you're taught to do, but do it aggressively. That means two things. Number one, being physical off the line. Air raid offenses are a lot like the West Coast offense in this regard. There's a level of timing to it. Not quite like the old school Bill Walsh 1-2-3 throw slant routes, but there's a level of timing to it. There's a level of get to this mark, get to this spot. And if you can be physical and get them off their timing, make them have to work harder to get a free release here. Don't let them just get you to chase across. Jam them at the line of scrimmage. Get up in their chest. Slow down the process, because if the seam eventually gets downfield, but it takes them about 2 seconds longer, you've got your forearm in his ribs and you're not getting out of there, that quarterback's not going to have time to get that ball to him. And or if he does, it's going to be a real tight window. So don't let them get free releases. Be physical at the line. Be disciplined with your angles to the ball, because they're going to catch passes. They're going to catch hitches, slants, crossers. They're going to catch a lot of passes. If you're where you need to be and you're aggressive, you're flying downhill, and as soon as they catch the ball, you're drilling them. You're tackling them in space. It's a lot easier to tackle a receiver when he catches the ball than it is to catch a receiver once he gets running or once he's able to square you up. And so that's why I say discipline and aggressiveness is required. And as you said, Trev, it's not an easy line to kind of toe all the time. But when you have a veteran secondary that can run and has the length that Notre Dame's does, that's what's expected of you. Come down at this angle on a crosser, not this angle on a crosser, or vice versa. Be disciplined, but within that proper angle, go fast, go hard, and be physical. That's what's going to be needed, because this is a young-looking receiving core. It's a unit that's playing well together. You come out there in this game, and all of a sudden you're getting smacked, you're catching the ball, and you're just getting drilled right away. You're not able to square people up. You're not able to get into, your moves. You're catching the ball going down, or you're getting drilled when the ball's getting there, all that stuff, and they're not giving you room to run. That gets frustrating for an air raid offense. And that's when you start pressing, and that's when mistakes happen. So that's why I say you got to toe that line from a covered, and this is not just the DBs. This also includes the linebackers, because that's probably the part of the team I'm most concerned about in pass game is the linebackers not being disciplined and patient in coverage. And that's where you're shut them down, you shut them down, you shut them down. This climb route doesn't get covered by your backside inside linebacker, and it goes for 40. You're running back out of the backfield. Your receiver goes in motion and does a jet, and your linebacker doesn't pick him up, and he wheels around for a big gain. Those are the things that concern me about this offense. Those are the chunk plays that I'm concerned about in this game. And if you're disciplined and aggressive in your coverage structure, then you're going to have success. And that's where I want to see Notre Dame in this game.
You mentioned something that I wanted to touch on because it bleeds perfectly into what our final key to victory is. You said if Notre Dame is able to toe that line and be disciplined, but also play aggressively, you're going to start to force some mistakes, which leads into what our final key to victory is. You got to get the ball. Here's some numbers for you guys. Notre Dame last season, they ranked number 1 in the country in turnovers. They forced 33 turnovers. They gained 33 turnovers last season. They had 14 wins on the year. 32 of their 33 turnovers came in those 14 wins. In the 2 games that they lost, they forced a combined 1, which was Drake Bowen's forced fumble on Emeka Egbuka in the national championship game. 1. Didn't force a turnover against Northern Illinois, and you only forced 1 against Ohio State. So there is a trend when Notre Dame forces turnovers, and when they win the turnover battle, that has a direct implication from the sample size that we have from last season of Notre Dame being able to go on and win the game. Now, what implications does that have for Miami? Notre Dame is on the road in a top 10 matchup. You got to be able to force turnovers. Have to be able to force turnovers. Their last time going on the road and beating an AP top 10 opponent, they also forced a turnover in that game. That was Manti Te'o's interception on Landry Jones, the diving interception that was put on his highlight reel, trip to New York, Heisman reel. And so there's a common theme here. When you're on the road, when you have a young and athletic, fast, long defense like this, Brian, you got to be able to take the ball away.
Oh, there's no doubt, Trev. I mean, you just look at Carson Beck when he struggled, obviously, last season. We've talked about that, some of the issues that he had in that game. And like to your point, those are big moments. There was only 1 turnover in that Oklahoma game, but there were 2 big mistakes in that game. One was, remember, that early snap over their head, which is a big reason why I would say make them run a lot of plays. Don't let them get the big plays, because the more plays you run, the more chance there is for a mistake. But in a game like this, turnovers are going to be huge, and you've got to get the ball. You look at Carson Beck last year for Georgia. In their 2 games that they lost last year, Carson Beck had 4 interceptions. I don't count the Texas game because he didn't finish that. I mean, the Notre Dame game because he didn't play in it. But obviously, turnovers were a huge part of that game. A huge part of that game for Notre Dame against Georgia. But that's the thing is, the Mississippi State game last year, where I thought Georgia struggled to really put Mississippi State away. Carson Beck had 2 interceptions. The Georgia game, they beat Texas where he threw 3 picks. If you go, listen, let's just be real about something, okay? If Carson Beck goes 23 of 41 for 175 yards, no touchdowns, and 3 picks against Notre Dame, this will not be a close game, and it will be a loss for Miami. They're not going to beat a team like Notre Dame or Texas the way that Georgia did last year, because they don't have the other things going on for Georgia that Georgia had. If you can force turnovers, get the ball. I want to see them just in general get their hands on the football. I want to see them, knock the ball down. I want to see it, pass breakups. I want to see fumbles, even if that means that they recover it. But you've got to get the ball. You got to get the ball a couple times. You got to win the turnover battle. And if Notre Dame can do that, especially early, then this is going to be a real fun day for Notre Dame. Real fun day.
Yeah.
Night. I should say night.
Fun night. Either way, Sunday will be a good game if Notre Dame's able to turn the ball over and complete a lot of the keys on defense that we had. Right now, FanDuel has Miami's over-under point total at 23.5. And so that's something to keep an eye on. That's one that, right now Notre Dame is favored in the spread by 2.5 points. It kind of bleeds into what Notre Dame's over-under point total was.
And if they can't run the ball effectively and turn the ball over multiple times, it's going to be very hard for them to get to that number against a team like Notre Dame. But if they are able to run the ball well, you can't pressure back, and you don't get the football, then Miami's got a very good shot of getting to that total. This is not a team in my opinion, going to go out there and beat 17-10, unless it's just the weather's just like borderline 2016 NC State game wet. Like I don't see that. You know what I mean, Trev? Unless your offense can put them behind and that type of thing. But like this offense is going to have their moments. You've got to make sure that you're doing those things that we talked about. And getting the ball is the final culmination of all the things. It all leads to, dominate line of scrimmage, puts them in more long yardage situations. Then if you're able to do that and pressure Carson Beck and be disciplined in coverage, that's going to do what? You're going to be in position to get the ball. It all leads together. It all leads together. And yeah. I'm excited to see what this defense is going to be, bro. I really am.
You and me both. You and me both, man. Well, listen, folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show. Don't go anywhere. Meat and Potatoes is up next. We're talking game predictions. Brian and I are going to reveal how we see this game going down. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Make sure that notification bell is hit so you know whenever we go live. Also, be sure to subscribe to the CFB Nation channel. Vince D'Addario and I are going live tonight for the second edition of the Spread Option. We are going to be covering a lot of the important Week 1 games. We're going to be talking about different spreads, what locks we have, what bets to stay away from, some that shouldn't touch your bet slip at all. And we're also going to be covering the dogs of the week. Not just the Georgia Bulldogs, but our underdogs of the week. So make sure you tune in tonight at 8 p.m. is when we go live. But for Irish Breakdown, the best way to support what we do here, you guys know what it is. Make sure you subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian. In part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel, it's about that time, and it is time that we start talking about game predictions. What game are we talking about? Well, we're talking about the top 10 matchup that's going down in Miami Gardens on Sunday night. Kickoff is at 7:30 p.m. You guys can catch it on ABC and ESPN. Just to give you guys a little bit of a window in here, spread option, we talk about the big 3, spread, money line, and the over-under. Right now, Notre Dame is favored in this game by 2.5 points. Notre Dame is also the favorite to win this game. Money line for them, odds are at minus 134 right now. Then the over-under for this game, despite the weather, is set at 49.5 right now. And so those are kind of what FanDuel has going on for those lines. We use FanDuel to go over what our big 3 are going to be. But, Brian, we're talking Notre Dame, Miami. It's game prediction time.
Trev, I had a question I had for you about the spread first before we go on to it. What was the thing that you found most interesting, either spread-wise or one of the deeper lines about this game? What was the one that you looked at and were like, besides the Malachi Fields receiving yards one?
Oh, gosh. I mean, there was a handful. I mean, was it one that we talked about earlier today outside of the Malachi Fields one? I mean, look, the passing yards for this game, I think, are really, really interesting. Carson Beck's line for his over-under passing yards has gone up again since we talked about it yesterday. His line is now up to 239.5 passing yards, which I also thought was interesting. So CJ Carr's is still sub 190 on FanDuel. So thought some of those lines were pretty interesting.
Has this moved a little bit? It's gone down.
CJ Carr's is still at 186.5. Carson Beck's is the only one that's moved. It opened up at 216.5. Then it bumped up to 234.5, and now it's up to 239.5. So his is steadily increasing, which is making it significantly more enticing for me to look at that under.
Well, Trev, let's make our predictions, and here's how we do it. For those of you that remember how this goes, Trev's going to give his prediction and then explain how he sees the game being played, and then I'll do it, and then we'll talk some predictions for game wreckers, and then we'll dive into the other big games this weekend. So, Trev, what's your score prediction for this game? I know what it is. We're very close on this one. What's your score prediction, and how do you see the game playing out?
Yeah, I have Notre Dame winning this game 28-20. And when I go and I look through how I see this playing out, here's the thing. I think that if Notre Dame reaches 30 points, I don't think that there's any way that they lose this game. I know that's somewhat of a bold statement considering they're playing an offense that led the country in scoring last year, but it's a completely rebuilt offense. Not up front, new quarterback, new pass catchers, helps that you have Shannon Dawson coming back. But look, Notre Dame's defense is to the level where if they're able to keep opponents under X amount of points, 30 points is kind of that key for me. But why is my prediction 28-20? In Notre Dame's biggest matchups last year, they weren't able to break that 30 threshold. They scored 23 against Texas A&M. They scored 27 against Indiana. They scored 23 against Georgia, 27 against Penn State, and 23 against Ohio State. Until they show me that they can break that threshold of 30, it's going to be really difficult for me to predict them to get to that level. Now, when I see how this game plays out, I think that, and I said this on last night's show, I went on The Voice of College Football with Mark Rogers, and I got the pleasure of going on with Cam, and he's a Miami fan, and we went back and forth for a little bit. And how I see this game playing out, I think that there's more questions that Miami has to answer. Every team going into week one has loads of questions. Notre Dame has their fair share. But I think when you compare it, the analogy I used yesterday is if there was a bar graph, I think Miami just has significantly more questions to answer than what Notre Dame does. Yes, Notre Dame starts a redshirt freshman at quarterback, but their offensive coordinator is going into week two. Their offensive line last season, who won by double digits on the road, returned 6 starts going into Texas A&M. That number's been beefed up to 52. They're a year more experienced. They're a year bigger. Jeremiah Love is a year more experienced. On defense, yes, new defensive coordinator. But you bring back your D-line coach, your linebacker coach, your secondaries coach, who is also your pass game coordinator, and you have a host of talent on the defensive side of the ball. I know that home field advantage is going to be in Miami's favor, but I think home field advantage can only get you so far. I think Notre Dame wins the battle in the trenches on offense and on defense. And that's going to put CJ Carr in a position where he's not going to have to do too much to win this football game. Because, Brian, you and I have been talking about it all offseason long, whether it was CJ or Kenny who ended up QB1 for Notre Dame this fall, they should not be asked to do and play the role of what Riley Leonard had to do for this team at times last season. I think that the supporting cast for Notre Dame puts CJ in a spot where he won't have to do that. I have Notre Dame winning 28-20.
Trev, like I said, we're close. I have it Notre Dame 27-20. I was leaning towards more of a 31-17, 30-17 type of game. But because of the weather, I see it being a little bit different, and it doesn't change it a lot. I worry about putting a first-year starting quarterback into a game like this with the conditions that they're going to be. There could be some mistakes and miscues, whether it's a muffed handoff, a muffed snap, an interception, something like that, where I could see this game being a little bit more competitive and closer. So as the game got closer, my score got tighter. I also think Miami's a good football team. I know there's some Notre Dame fans that think this Miami team is garbage and they're just going to go out and kill Miami. And I mean, they could potentially be that way. It could potentially be a game where Notre Dame goes out there and crushes Miami. I think it's certainly possible. If you come out and because like you said something, Trev, that if you said Notre Dame's going to what'd you say, dominate on or control the trenches on both sides of the ball. If Notre Dame controls the trenches on both sides of the ball, I think this is a 2-score game. Just how I see it playing out. If they do that, I just think that Miami's size on defense is gonna at least early on cause Notre Dame to maybe not quite have the success that they'd like to have running the football. I think that'll kind of more pick up in the second half. I see it being a much lower scoring game in the first half. I think it's going to take it could take the Notre Dame offense a little bit of time to get into a rhythm. You do have a first-year starting quarterback. You are on the road against a top 10 defense with new weapons. I don't expect them to come out and put 27 on the board in the first half. I just don't. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. You've got the best running back room in college football. You've got a top 10 receiver room, a dynamic tight end, a top 10 offensive line, and an incredibly talented young quarterback. It's possible it could all click. But in the rain on the road against a top 10 team, I just think it might take a while. So I think in the second half, Notre Dame will control the trenches. I don't know. I think in the first half, it'll be more back and forth is how I see it going. I think Miami will have some success early on running the football until the Notre Dame defensive line proves to me that they can slow down the run game. Second half, I think they make some adjustments. I think they make some more early down stops. That then turns Boubacar Traore and Bryce Young loose in the second half, and that's when the mistakes start to happen for Miami. So I see it being a 27-20 game. I see it being a back-and-forth game, but I do think that it'll be clear in the fourth quarter that Notre Dame's the better team. And if I'm wrong, at this point in time, I feel like I'm going to be wrong more so because it's not this close, not that I'm wrong that Miami wins. I think the only way Miami wins this game, and again, I'm higher on Miami, I think, than you are, and a lot of people in the chat seem to be based on some of these predictions, but I still think that Notre Dame's the better team across the board. I think the conditions are going to make this a little bit tighter than maybe we think it should be, and I think the fact that Miami has good players is going to make it a little tighter than it's going to be, and I think it's going to take Notre Dame's lines a little bit to get going. And as long as they can weather the bad turnovers early in the game, I think Notre Dame wins this game. I think the only way they lose this game is if they just make a bunch of bad mistakes, giving up big plays like blown coverages, bad run fits that result in 50-yard gains, turnovers on offense, drop passes. I think the only way Notre Dame loses if we see a decent amount of stuff like that. And if we don't, if they play clean, then Notre Dame could absolutely win and win convincingly. But as we saw in the A&M game last year, Notre Dame had missed a lot of opportunities in that game to put Miami away, and that put A&M away, and that allowed A&M to stay in that game. And Notre Dame didn't really pull away until the very end. I see this game being very similar to that, but with the other team having just a better quarterback than what Texas A&M had. So there's some missed opportunities that he had also in that game that I don't think Carson Beck misses. And that's why I'm going with the way that it is. So I'm going Notre Dame 27 and Miami 20. Do you agree, Trev, that if you're wrong, we're going to be wrong in the direction of Notre Dame wins more convincingly? I would be very surprised. Look, Notre Dame lost to Northern Illinois last year. They've lost to Marshall, Stanford, barely beat Toledo. They barely beat Ball State over the years. They've lost to Tulsa. They've lost to North. Anything can happen. The 2016 Clemson title team lost at home to Pitt. Things happen. But what I'll say confidently is, and I was talking to Sean Davis about this, I just don't think that Miami's capable of beating Notre Dame if Notre Dame plays their game. I think if they both play their game, I just think Notre Dame's a better team. It's as simple as that. But if you don't, and you sloppy and turn it over, then that Miami's capable of beating you, just like the Northern Illinois game.
Yeah, I mean, it feeds into what my season-long prediction was for Notre Dame. I said that they were going to go undefeated in the regular season and finish by the end of November 12-0. Why? Because when I look at game by game, I think Notre Dame has a better roster on paper than every opponent that they face, all 12 of them. To the dismay of other opposing fans in the chat, whether they like to hear that or not, you look at Notre Dame's roster top to bottom, it is top 3 in the country and not third in my eyes. And when I look at Miami, they have good pieces. They do, but it's a question of how quickly does it come together? That's my question with Notre Dame. How quickly does this top 3 roster come together? And with the continuity at the coaching level, yes, I know they lost the defensive coordinator to the NFL, but they return a lot of key pieces as far as day-to-day development. Sounds like everything that we've heard through fall camp, they're taking on to that new system extremely well. What's it going to look like in week 1? You and I are going to sit down and find that out together on Sunday at 7:30. But when I just look at this, I agree with you wholeheartedly. If Notre Dame plays their game, sometimes it comes down to the Jimmies and the Joes, like we like to say, and I think Notre Dame has the horses to win this game if they play their game.
If they play their game, I think we'll know by halftime that this is not going to be all that close of a game. Like we'll know early because you'll see CJ Card getting time to throw. He'll be making plays. You'll see the defense just swarming to the ball. Miami can't get anything going. We'll see that early. It'll be early. Like we'll know early. Like okay, Notre Dame is locked in game 1, or we'll know early because like guys, we watched. Did any of you watch football this weekend? It's going to be the same thing on Saturday. There's going to be a lot of good football, but there's going to be a lot of week 1 stuff this year in college football. And Notre Dame, now sometimes it's one team has that, and that's what can cause some early season games to go a different direction. I mean, if you watched the Clemson Georgia game last year, like man, Clemson got killed 30-3. Yeah, the game turned. The final score looked different than how the game played. It was like 6-0 at halftime. Cade Klubnik had like 4 wide open receivers down the field he missed. Like game should, but there was that week 1 stuff, just not being on the same page, silly mistakes you don't make in week 5. Notre Dame's got to avoid that stuff. And if they can, then I think we'll be going into halftime like, okay, like this is going to be a good one. That's
Agreed. One of the new things that we are going to do on Thursdays, Brian, is we have a new little segment in here called Picks to Click. And this is where we look at a player on offense and we look at a player on defense that we think that are going to be the most dominant or the most impactful for the game. And we'll kind of do it like we do everything else. I'll give mine on offense and defense, and then Brian can go ahead and do his. Or Brian, do you want to switch it up? Do you want to do, I go offense, you go offense, and then I go defense, you go defense? How do you want
to for the game wreckers?
Oh, I didn't know if you wanted to do any of the picks to click. I know that was.
Oh, yes, that's right. We do have that. Yes, let's do that. Well, let's just do it this way, Trev. Let's just have our game wrecker segment be our picks to click. How about that?
Love it.
Because the original order, we were going to go game wreckers first. And we were going to have, here's who we think are going to be some game wreckers. But let's just have fun with that. And let's just make our predictions for our game wreckers. So let's just say, okay, you give your offensive, game wreckers, sort of our picks to click. Here are guys that we think are going to be the most impactful in this victory. So you give your offensive ones and I'll go, and you give your defensive ones and I'll go, and then we'll wrap it up before we get into our college football predictions, which are going to come next.
Love it. Well, listen, for me on offense, when I go and I look at this, I have a couple of players in mind. I have, to start off, one of Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price. Now, look, we can talk X's and O's. We can talk about what kind of performance CJ Carr is going to have. But in big games and big moments, it sounded like I'm bringing something back up of what we talked about a lot in the postseason, Brian. And sometimes your dudes got to be dudes in these games. And it's not a mystery to me that, the two workhorses for Notre Dame and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price last season were also the first two players to reach the end zone for Notre Dame last season. They're going to need more of that. We've spent all offseason talking about how there's not a better running back duo in college football. And we think Jeremiah Love is the best returning running back in college football and a top 5 returning player in college football. In a top 10 matchup under the lights, the lone night game slot on Labor Day weekend in college football in a rivalry renewed, you got to be that dude. And so I think that Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price, my first game wreckers on offense. Next up for me is Malachi Fields. You brought him in for a reason, and he's a big threat in the boundary. He gives you a weapon that you haven't had in your offensive system for quite some time, really dating back to 2019 with Chase Claypool. This is our opportunity to see, is he as advertised? And if he is, and I believe that he is, and I'm Brian, I have a strong feeling that you think he's going to be as advertised as well, he's going to be another person that blows this open. And the last person for me, when I talk offensive game wreckers, I'm going to the offensive line here, and I'm talking Billy Schrauth. He's somebody that has generated a lot of attention this offseason, and for all the right reasons. He talked yesterday in the media session about competition and how he's been striving to get better and better and better. There's going to be somebody on Notre Dame's offensive line that's going to have to kind of settle this group down. Wouldn't shock me if that was Emil Wagner either. But they need somebody along the interior to get the run game going for Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price to be the game wreckers we think that they can be. There's going to have to be somebody on the offensive line that pulls them aside when, it's the heat of the moment, no pun intended, but it's, crowds roaring. You got to put together a scoring drive. I think 74 pulls everybody aside and says, hey, get behind me, follow me. And I think that's what he's been set up for. So my last game wrecker on offense is going to be Billy Schrauth, an offensive captain.
I dig it. My 3 are, we kind of followed a similar path, Trevor. I'm looking at my notes right here, and I'm like, this sucker picked an offensive lineman. I thought I was going to be the creative one that went with an O lineman. Killing me, Smalls. My first one is not Jeremiah Love. It's Jadarian Price, because I see this being a game where they are going to be so focused on Jeremiah Love that it's almost kind of like when he's not on the field, there's a collective, okay. And that's what's going to result in Jadarian Price going off. And I do think, I don't know this, I've been told this, this is not intel. I just have a feeling because we saw it last year in the opener, where there will be some 21 personnel stuff or 20 personnel stuff where they are going to move Jeremiah around to kind of get them to focus on him, maybe get him a couple throws early, but then use that to kind of gash him with some run game. I think Jadarian Price is going to be the game wrecker. Now, Jeremiah still may lead the team in rushing, but I think the difference in this game is going to be Jadarian getting some of those big gash runs that loosens up the defense. That's exactly what happened against A&M. The leading rusher in that game was Jeremiah Love. He put that game away in the fourth quarter. But it was Price who sparked that offense twice. Now, one of those runs got called back because of a penalty, but then he's the one who busted off that 47-yard touchdown run where he makes a linebacker miss and then pops that sucker outside and outruns A&M for a touchdown that sparked Notre Dame's offense a little bit last year. And remember, Florida State was doing that. They were so keyed in when Jeremiah Love was on the field that when they put in Jadarian, it was kind of like 65-yard touchdown because they like that those little mistakes that they weren't making early, they make, and then he just makes you pay for it. So I think that Jadarian's the guy that makes the big difference in this game. He's going to be that extra dimension. He's just going to provide 3 or 4 just gash runs where Miami's like, dang, we thought we had the run game bottled up, and then 24 comes in here and hammers us, and then all of a sudden that leads to the second half where him and Jeremiah are both kind of going off. So that's my pick to click my game record on offense. And the other one is I shocked Trevor. So I've never been more disappointed in you in my life than when in the first game of the year you didn't go with Eli Raridan as a game wrecker. Can't believe it. In all seriousness, I am going Eli Raridan in twofold. I think he's going to have a big impact in the run game, and I think he's going to make some big-time plays in this game. My first 2 game wreckers are based off of Miami's entire game plan is going to be don't let 4 beat us. And these are 2 guys that I think are going to benefit the most from that. I think Eli's going to make some big plays in this game, whether it's after the catch, stretching the field. But I also think the run game is going to be a big part of this too. He's going to have to be a factor on the edge and on the second level in this game. And when the run blocking at tight end is good, Notre Dame's run game is dangerous. When it's not, you got some edge players making some impact against the run game. It's a big part of it. What are we going to see? I'm predicting that Eli's going to have a big game run block. And then my third one is, and this is more of a wishful thinking than a necessarily a prediction, but I think Anthony Knapp's going to have a huge impact on this game one way or the other. Anthony Knapp is going to be a game wrecker in this game either for Notre Dame or for Miami. And if he struggles in pass pro, which is the big fear that Notre Dame fans have because he struggled in pass pro last year, then all of a sudden that's a game wreck in the opposite direction. But if Anthony Knapp is good in pass pro against the Miami edge players, he's going to be a game wrecker because we know he's going to be good in the run game. I mean, that's last year's a true freshman. He was dominant in the run game. Go ask Indiana. Go ask Georgia. Go ask Texas A&M what Anthony Knapp does in the run game. So as long as he can contain and just do your job in pass pro. I don't need you to take Ruben Bain and throw him into the stands. I just need you to stay between him and the quarterback and don't get launched into the quarterback's lap. You know what I'm saying? I don't need you to have your blindside moment where you put him on skates and drive him 70 yards and then flip him over a thing. I don't need all that. That's run game stuff. That's what Knapp will do in the run game. In the pass game, dude, just anchor well. Just be disciplined with your pass sets. Don't get driven into the quarterback. Don't give up free runners. Just do your job. If you're in the game with maybe 1 or 2 pressures allowed, no hits, no sacks, that's a win for Notre Dame. If Wagner and Shroud and Knapp don't allow any hits or sacks, I don't care if they give up a couple pressures. They're going to get some pressures. That's a win. And then the run game can take over. That's where you're going to see, in my opinion, Anthony Knapp become a game wrecker. So that's my prediction for the O-line game wrecker. He's going to have a big impact in this game one way or the other. I'm feeling positive about Anthony right now, and I think he's going to go out and that game wrecker is going to happen in Notre Dame's favor. Let's go defense, Trev. What say you?
Yep, same situation for me on defense. I have a handful of players to talk about here, and some of them are – the first one that we're going with is up front. There's going to be a lot of questions around the interior of Notre Dame's defensive line. You lose Riley Mills. Howard Cross is no longer there. Those are 2 All-American caliber players. There's a question of how will you replace that type of production? Well, from everything that we've heard out of camp, there's been one main standout. Everybody's performed well. Marcus Freeman came out on Tuesday and said, hey, I have a lot of confidence in this defensive tackle room now, but I think one is going to stand out in this game against Miami, and that's Jason Onye. I think that he has the opportunity to be their most well-rounded interior player in terms of generating a pass rush and being a force against the run. What was our second key to victory on defense, Brian? It was being able to stop the run. And in order to do that, you need your big boys up front in the trenches to handle business. Jason Onye is 6'5". He's over 300 pounds. He's an athletic guy. He's long. He's extremely strong. He's somebody that's going to have a big game, and I think that he will. He's somebody that can impact it in all 3 phases. He's somebody that can stay. He can generate pressure as a pass rusher. He's able to be disruptive and make some negative plays in the run game as well. So he's somebody that I believe is going to have a big game for Notre Dame. Second game record for me, we're moving up a level, and I'm going with linebacker Drake Bowen. I am not naive to the fact that Notre Dame does have a new defensive coordinator. As awesome as it is to say that Max Bola comes back and Al Washington and Mike Mickens, they do have a new defensive coordinator. They do have somebody else calling in plays. Drake Bowen is going to have to be the eyes and ears and the voice of Chris Ash while on the football field. He's a captain for a reason. You vote player. Look, man, Drake Bowen is the first junior captain linebacker at Notre Dame since Jalen Smith in 2015. That's pretty darn good company, I would say. And he's somebody that's going to have to rally his troops together. Notre Dame needs to be aggressive on defense, and I think that he personifies that when he's on the field. He's going to have to keep this team together. It's going to be a loud, crazy environment, and he's going to have to channel some of that energy and be the leader that we watched him be from the start of the Texas A&M game all the way to the end of the Ohio State game. So Drake Bowen is my second game record. And the third one, again, we're continuing moving back a level here. I got Adon Schuler. Adon has had, I don't want to call it a quiet offseason. I think it's just been relatively quiet because people know what to expect from him. You know,
I think that's why I think you're correct that it's been quiet, Trevor, but I think that's exactly why.
Yep.
Even though he's a redshirt sophomore, it's kind of like, he's fine. It's Adon.
Yep, exactly. Now, one of the question marks around safety is not just how do you replace Xavier Watts as the player, because, I mean, short answer, you don't. You know, a back-to-back consensus All-American, Bronco Nagurski award-winning safety in 2023. He's somebody that you can't just say, oh, okay, player A here. You just insert yourself, and you're now Xavier Watts. It's more so replacing his impact in big games. Well, who had the first turnover of the season for Notre Dame against Texas A&M on the road? It was Adon Schuler. Who was the player that forced the fumble against Georgia when they were in the red zone to really switch the momentum of that game when Georgia was starting to drive? It was Adon Schuler. He's somebody that's able to bring the juice. He's also a leader on defense. He's a hard hitter. He's somebody that, Brian, we talked about coverage is going to have to be disciplined but aggressive. I know for a fact that Adon Schuler is going to bring the aggressive trait to that table. He's going to have to remain disciplined, but he's another person that I think that is going to get this secondary room playing together cohesively as a unit. He's going to be starting alongside somebody that is either inexperienced at Notre Dame and Jalen Stroman, or he's going to be lining up and rotating against or in with somebody who is inexperienced in the big moments. Luke Talich, Tay Johnson, maybe an Ethan Long, depending on what that looks like for him. So he's somebody that has the opportunity to be what Xavier Watts was to him last season and help bring them along. I think he starts to fill the role of he's kind of the guy that the defense will look to when they need a big play to happen. So Adon Schuler is my last game wrecker on defense, Brian.
I dig it. I'm going front to back as well, Trev. I love where your head's at today. I'm going outside, though. I think it's going to be Boubacar Traore. I think you could go with Bryce Young. You could go with Jordan Patojo. You could go with Logan Thomas, Junior Josh Burnham. Like picking edge rushers, I think that's going to be a big part of this game. I'm going with Boubacar just because he's just the most gifted pass rusher they have. He had a great fall camp. He's healthy. I think he's going to have some very key moments. Hopefully it's early. Hopefully he has a couple big sacks early. But I really am looking like in the second half of watching Boubacar take this game away, take this game over a little bit as the game kind of wears on and Notre Dame's just throwing waves of edge rushers at this Miami offensive line. They slow down a little bit. Boubacar's going on snap 21. Markel Bell's going on snap 60 or 50. And Boubacar takes the game over, and just his speed is just too much to handle. I think he's going to have a couple big pressures in this game, effective on the edge in the run game, make some plays. I think Boubacar is going to have a big one. My other one is I'm going Jalen Sneed. I've heard a lot of great things about how well Jalen Sneed has performed in fall camp, making a ton of plays. He's going to make his mistakes. That's just kind of, you have to live with that with Jalen Sneed. Is like he's going to have a couple plays where he just decides he's going to go do his own thing, and it's going to hurt you. That's why your safety's got to protect him. But he's making less of those now and more of the impactful plays. And that's why he's going to start at will linebacker. He's not starting will linebacker out of seniority. He got the first nod of the first day of spring practice because he was the veteran, and he did a nice spring. Not a great spring. Got the first reps of fall camp because he's the veteran. But starting in fall camp, from what I've been told, he has really performed well. Jaden Osbury had a great fall camp. Kingston Viliama-Asa had a great fall camp. Drake Bowens had a great fall camp. Drake's going to be their best linebacker, in my opinion. But I just see in a game like this where you're playing a team with Miami speed, you're going to see a guy like Jalen Snead's speed really be impactful. I think back to the Georgia game last year where Jalen in that first half was all over the field for Notre Dame. There's a couple plays where Georgia backs were like, hey, we're about to get outside. And then Jalen Snead just gets him for a 2-yard loss or a stop at the line of scrimmage. I think he's going to have some plays like that. And I'm not even necessarily predicting he's going to be the player of the game because of the pass rushing. I'm talking about as a linebacker. That's where I see Jalen Smith being. So that's where I think he's going to be the better player. And I think he's going to be impactful.
Love it. Did you have anybody else on the back end, Brian? Or
oh yeah, yep. I'm sorry, I just had to respond to this this comment in here. This the Drake Bowen disrespect from the Notre Dame fan base. Some in the Notre Dame fan base just continues to amaze me. But the last one I'm going with is Christian Gray. I think Christian Gray is absolutely hungry to get back out there. Absolutely hungry to get back out there and show that he is the guy we thought he was before his late season struggles. You know, there was a time last season where Notre Dame fans who now think Christian Gray's no good was those same people are talking about, I think he might be better than Benjamin Morrison with the way he played early in the season. That's more of who I think he is. I think he's going to be chomping at the bit in a game like this. And Miami does, like, Miami's going to take their shots on him, and he's got to trust himself. Like, that's Christian's biggest problem. Trust yourself, not trust the system, not trust your coaching. That's always important, but trust yourself. Like that's the key here. Trust yourself. Look, you're in position. Don't get all grabby. Like, trust your speed, trust your length, trust your technique. Stay with, then let the teaching take over and you'll make some plays. But the other part of it too is Miami throws a lot of quick game. A lot of crossers, a lot of outs, a lot of quick stuff. And Christian has been great about baiting quarterbacks into that. And he's so fast when he plants and drives downhill. And that's why he was getting all those pass breakups last year. You know, he almost had to pick 6 against Texas A&M late in the game. There was another game early he should have had a pick 6. Was it Miami of Ohio?
It was Miami. It was Miami of Ohio.
He then has a pick or a ball where they try to throw a slant in front of him. He drives on it, pops it up in the air, and Junior Tuilamaka picks it off. Like that plays right into where he is going to be at his best. And so I think Christian is going to be that game wrecker. I don't know that Miami's going to spend a lot of time throwing at Leonard Moore. It would be smart for them not to do that. Christian Gray, they will go at, and I think he's going to make some big plays due to that. And so that's why Christian Gray is my next pick to click in this game.
Love that.
I just think he's chomping at the bit to let everybody know, like, hey, like I'm still that dude. I'm still that dude. That's what I'm hoping we see that, and I think we will see that.
Before we switch over here, Brian, I do have a curveball I want to throw at you. It's been a good conversation. I love talking about.
I like it when Trev does this. Let's go. What do you got? What you got?
Let's go unsung heroes on offense and defense. We talked about who we thought the game wreckers could be. But who, in your eyes, one player on offense, one player on defense? I want to hear from the chat, too. Who do you guys think has the opportunity that at the end of the day on Sunday, we walk away, we're sitting down in the postgame show, and it's, man, can you believe the performance from insert player here? Or somebody that just might not get enough of the attention. I have one for defense. I'm still thinking mine on offense. But I'll go ahead and I'll kick us off. I'll get us started. I think an unsung hero on defense is going to be Devontae Smith. A lot of the things that he, that's why. Because a lot of the things that Shannon Dawson likes to do on offense plays into the wheelhouse of what we saw Devontae Smith excel at last year. He gave up some receptions last year, but not a lot of yak, not a lot of yards after catch, because he's somebody that you might catch it at 5 yards and you're getting tackled at 6. And I think that we walk away from Devontae Smith, we walk away from this game talking about, hey, look, he gave up nothing after the catch, because this is an athletic Miami receiving group. And they are people that can make plays in space. And so I think Devontae Smith being a sure open field tackler, that was a very underrated part of Jordan Clark's game last year. I think that we could walk away with Devontae Smith being an unsung hero on defense. What do you think, Brian?
I'm going Gabe Rubio. I think Gabe Rubio you're going to look at the end of the game, he's going to have like 2 tackles, maybe no tackles for loss, no sacks. no big plays. But when we pop in the film on Sunday or Monday, I should say, and we're breaking down the film, I'm like, dude, Gabe was a dog. Like, he was stout. He was eating up double teams. Like, do you know why the linebackers had, like 7 tackles for loss in this game? They were constantly cutting behind Gabriel's double team, where he was holding up at the double team. He was getting a push, doing those type of things. Like, I think it's going to be a guy like that, where he's not going to have the sexy numbers. Like, Onye will have the big sack and the big tackle for loss. Jared Dawson will have a big sack, but it's going to be like, man, you break down the film, like, this dude was just steady Eddie up the middle, man. Why couldn't they get anything going up the middle? They couldn't move Gabe. And that's the reality of it. They couldn't move him. He had a big game. And I think last year's late season opportunities, people forget, people don't want to talk about, well, I don't know if Notre Dame could beat Miami because they don't have Riley Mills. And I'm like, and Howard Cross, I'm like, Howard Cross was like a shell of himself the last 4 games of the season, first of all, because of the injuries. B, they didn't have Riley Mills against Georgia. They didn't have Riley Mills against Penn State. They didn't have Riley Mills against Ohio State. They also didn't have Boubacar Traore against those teams. Like they didn't have Jason Onye against those teams. Like, they were playing with like 3 of their 4 best defensive linemen, or actually Jordan Pataho in that game. They were playing without 4 of their 5 best defensive linemen by the time they got to the Georgia game. Still beat the crap out of Georgia up front and played pretty well in the second half of that Penn State game. And I think Gabriel, when he's playing well, when Gabe is playing well, that's a big reason why the D-line is successful, because he's stout, he's consistent, he doesn't make a ton of plays, doesn't need to make a ton of plays, I should say. He's just physical at the point of attack, and you just can't move him. You can't get that stretch on the D-line because he's just there. You can't move him. So that's my one on defense. Did you give your offensive one yet?
Not yet.
Okay,
not yet. My offensive one, and to some, this might not be an unsung hero, but I think with a lot of the attention going to Malachi Fields and Jaden Greathouse and Eli Raridan, I think Jordan Faison is somebody that could get the offense going early, and he could do something similar to what he did in the Indiana playoff game. He's somebody like a lot of the takeaways from the Indiana playoff games, Jeremiah Love's 98-yard touchdown run, Xavier Watts had a pick. But even before the deep over route that Riley Leonard hit him on late in that game, Jordan Faison was far and away their most productive receiver in that game. Ran a lot of screens to him. Mm-hmm.
First 2 playoff games, he was very good against Georgia as well.
He's somebody that I think could, to your point, Brian, have the similar impact to what he had in Indiana and Georgia, in that, look, what's going to be a quarterback's best friend in this? Receivers that can get yards after the catch, help get them in rhythm. And Faison is somebody that has proven he can be a playmaker with the football in his hands. Now, I don't know if he ends the game with a touchdown. I think in the post-game show, we're going to sit down and talk about, this is why you brought in Malachi Fields, or, hey, this is why you have the best running back room in the country, or, hey, looks like Jaden Greathouse is picking up where he left off. But I could absolutely see Jordan Faison ending the game with like 4 receptions for 37 yards, and they all go for first downs. I could see something like that, absolutely.
Somebody in the chat said that they think it's hard for a receiver to be a unsung unless it's blocking, and I think that misses the mark. I think this is where I think a lot of fans don't quite understand the impact that receivers have in a game. And this is where I think Jaden Greathouse is going to be the unsung hero for Notre Dame. Because number one, what's the one guy, if you're breaking down Notre Dame's film from last season, if you're a defensive coach, the one guy that's coming back that is going to be a focal point is Jaden Greathouse. And it's not just because of what he did in the last 2 games. Anyone that broke down Notre Dame's games last year is going to be like, one was open a lot. He just didn't get the ball. And it's no coincidence that once he starts finally getting the ball to him, he goes off. That was all. I keep telling people this, it was all year. All year he was open like that. But you can't catch the ball if it's not thrown to you. And I've talked about his numbers. Higher completion percentage when he was targeted than any of the top returning slot receivers in college football. More yards per target than any top slot receiver coming back, except for the Caden Lee from Ole Miss. Also had better numbers than Emeka Egbuka last year, went on a per-target basis. The problem was he just didn't get targeted enough for a host of reasons. One being Riley wasn't a super comfortable throwing over the middle of the field. Riley liked to keep the ball outside, which is kind of how he was at Duke. I mean, if you go look at the numbers of his slot receivers and throwing over the middle in his tight ends, his 2 years at Duke were averaged less than 10 yards a catch because they're just nothing but checkdowns. And so I think Jaden's going to make a couple plays, chain moving plays. They're going to focus a lot of their attention on him. He's going to block well. He'll make a couple chain moving plays. He may have 3 catches for 33 yards, but you're going to be like, dude, did you see that play that Faison caught that ball, open space, took off for a 30-yard gain? Yeah, go watch 3 dudes running with Jaden Greathouse. That's how a receiver can be an unsung hero. Boy, did you see that play where Malachi Fields bombed that dude on a backside post route, touchdown, 40-yard gain? Yeah, because the safety was staring at number 1. Like, that's how a receiver can have an impact beyond just blocking and his production as targets. It's how much of the defense is focusing on you, how hard are you playing in those instances, and then how is that opening up other opportunities for other people? Hey, did you see that play where Eli Raritan was wide open down the seam and CJ hit him? Why is that? Because the Mike linebacker was so focused on number 1 running a little pivot route over the middle that they were like, yeah, we forgot about number 9. It's things like that where a receiver can be an unsung hero without getting targeted a bunch. Because if you catch 9 balls for 120 yards, you're not an unsung hero. That's how it's very easy for a receiver to be an unsung hero. And I point to the Texas game and say, well, yeah, I mean, Jeremiah Smith had 1 catch for 4 yards, but look what happened on some other plays. Look what Cardinal Tate did in that game. Look what Emeka did. Look why? Because Texas was so focused on stopping Jeremiah that it opened up those other opportunities. And that's where I think a guy, and that's what we're going to look back and like, man, did Greathouse not do anything? He had 3 catches for 33 yards, and I'm like, let's watch the film. This is why Jaden Greathouse had an impact on this game. And so I think that's where I'm going to have him as my unsung hero. It's not just, he'll make some plays, but it's not just that. It's going to be a lot of that attention. And Jaden's going to be a big part of the blocking scheme receiver blocking that's going to be a focal point. I could see Malachi Fields being this guy too, Trev. I could see Malachi having like 3 catches for 41 yards just because they're focusing on him, but he's blocking his tail off and, something like that. I could see something like that as well. But that's why I think Jaden Greathouse is my unsung hero. I like that question. I dig that.
Love it.
New segment of the show. Writing that down right now.
Love it. Well, listen, folks, that is going to do it for the Notre Dame portion of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to break down 3 marquee matchups this weekend, and it's actually a day before Notre Dame kicks off on Sunday. But that will do it for the Notre Dame versus Miami game predictions, keys to victory. A lot of fun. Can't wait to do at least 11 more of these. Hopefully we get to do a total of 15. Hint, hint. But before we get to the other marquee matchups of this weekend, be sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. While you're also in the spirit of subscribing to different channels, also make sure that you subscribe to the CFB Nation podcast. That's something that we are going to be pumping a lot of new content into this season. I'll be going live on there tonight with Vince D'Addario to do the 2nd edition of the Spread Option, where we'll be talking even more about the games we're getting ready to talk about, but from a betting standpoint. So make sure you tune in tonight. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian, we have a fun slate of games on Saturday, and I know it's only 3 days away till Notre Dame kicks off. It's only 2 days until we get to see a lot of marquee matchups going on this weekend. And, we're going to highlight 3 main ones, but there's a lot of good games going on this weekend, and unsung games, if you will. But where we're going to start today, Brian, is we're going to talk about kind of an unknown of how this season is going to play out for them. But Alabama is traveling down to Doak Campbell Stadium to take on the Florida State Seminoles. That game is happening at 3:30 p.m. It's going to be kicking off on ABC. And just to kind of give you some, particulars of the game, we like to call it the Big 3. Alabama's favored by 13.5 points. Florida State is 2 touchdown dogs at home. Right now, the money line is in favor of Alabama. Odds aren't great, so I kind of stay away from it. And the over/under is at 50.5. This is an interesting matchup, Brian. We've talked about Florida State quite a bit this offseason, and they're just a program that we just don't know a whole lot about right now.
Dude, we don't. I mean, the fact that they're a 13.5-point underdog at home to Alabama, and not even like a vintage Nick Saban Alabama team, but an Alabama team coming off of a 9-4 season, and an Alabama team that I'm actually, as I'm higher on than most people. I have Bama in the title game this year, but just a little surprised at how little respect they're getting, but I also understand it. Like, what better is going to look, especially like just more of the casual betting fan is going to look at this game and be like, yeah, I think Florida State's going to win this game after their 2-10 campaign. It's like, yeah, I know Bama lost to a couple not very good teams, but those teams were way better than what Florida State was last year. And it's a team whose entire depth chart has just been remade. So it is hard to have any idea of who Florida State is. I could see Bama just running Florida State off the field like it's over by halftime. I could see that. I watched them both play last year. I could also see a scenario where Florida State, is in the game or maybe pulls off an upset. Like, we just don't know. There's talent at Florida State, but it's a brand new team. And I don't know how quickly they're going to come together. So it does make for a very interesting game, Trev, and it makes for a very interesting matchup. It also makes it for a difficult matchup from the standpoint of just really knowing what to get from Florida State. And then the other part of it is, any chance that Florida State gets overlooked by Alabama is gone because of Florida State, because they just kept running their mouths the whole offseason about Alabama. Thomas Castellanos running his mouth about Bama. Mike Norvell, glad I didn't take the job. It was like, dude, that's such an unnecessary, why are you trying to poke the bear? Let the, hey, you know what? We're just trying to go out there and be better and improve and just do the best we can. And, we're just trying to get better every day. Just shut up and just go play ball. But they're out there acting like Florida State. You'd think Florida State was the team that was, got screwed out of a playoff spot in their minds. I don't think Alabama got screwed. I think that's the perception that Bama has. And Bama's the 2-10 team. Like, that's how you'd think, the way that they're communicating. Bama players are we'll let our pads do the talking. I don't know if this is necessarily the right approach for Florida State. It's like, it seems like you are an uncertain team trying to convince yourselves that you're good. That's what it seems like to me in this game, Trev, right? Like, doesn't it just scream that? It's like they're the college football version of Stuart Smalley. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. Like, you got to convince yourself you're not a loser. Like, that's what Florida State, that's the energy that I get when they start running their mouths like that. Like, bro, you got beat out by a dude at Boston College. What are we doing here? Mike Norvell, your team went 2-10 last year. Bama's happy you didn't take they're more happy than you are that you didn't take the job. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we doing here, man? Just go play ball. But having said that, when you look at that Florida State roster, if it all clicks, they got some dudes over there too, Trev. They do. And that's what makes it difficult.
100%. That's what makes this game extremely difficult to evaluate because, again, similar to last year, the ceiling is relatively high. We know that Florida State went 2-10 last year, but if you just look at the roster on paper, their ceiling was not 6-6. Now, can Mike Norvell bring it all together? It's a big maybe. But what I do know and what is a certain for this game, big maybe. That is a huge.
I don't know why that struck me. It's so funny. It just struck me as really funny.
It's
a big maybe.
It's a big maybe. I can't confidently say that he won't, but I certainly won't say that he will. But one thing that I do think that we can both say confidently is when you look at the opposite sideline and you look at what Alabama's bringing to the table, this is a pretty good roster. You have them playing in the national championship game. Yeah. I have Alabama playing in the college football playoff semifinals. It's coming.
They do come in this game a little banged up, though, Trev. That obviously Jam Miller's out. They were fortunate that Jam Miller went out when he did, from the standpoint of they've had 2 weeks to prepare without him, to get Richard Young and the other running backs kind of involved in the offense. So it's not a situation where like, oh my gosh, Jam Miller got hurt on the Wednesday before the first game. Okay, you still got Richard Young, you've got Daniel Hill. And honestly, as we said, they're not a team that necessarily is going to be building around running the football anyway. The running game is a complement to what Kalen DeBoer likes to do. You've got a pretty good offensive line that if you can't run the ball at Richard Young at running back, then you got bigger problems than not having Jam Miller. The big one for me is not having Tim Keenan. He got hurt he's out. He got hurt this past week. That's a big one for me. Jaden Roberts is in concussion protocol from what I read this morning, but they think he's going to play. That's a big one. for their offensive line. But I think it's Geno Vandermark would probably step in for him. He's played. Like, that's not a guy that's never played a meaningful down. So I think they'll be okay there anyway. But at the end of the day, Trev, I think that Bama's a little banged up, but I still think this is a talented football team. And I think Bama's coming into this game with a little bit of chip on their shoulder. I felt like Florida State tried to bait them into like a Twitter battle, and Bama was like, "No, we ain't having it. We're worried about us." And I always feel like the teams to worry about, it's like I've said this before, it's like in a fight. When you're like a big fight, if you're out at a club or something like that. I never thought that the guy that wanted to like talk loudly and do all this, I was never worried about that guy, because he's doing all that because he doesn't want me to come up to him. Like, he knows what's going to happen to him if I come up to him. Like, he's trying to like peacock and convince you not to fight him because he wants no part of that action. The guy that I'm worried about that gets pissed at you and he just comes right at you, not saying a word. He's coming right. I'm like, oh, okay, I better buckle up because this is about to get ugly. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the guy I'm worried about. And that's who Bama is right now. Like, okay, all right, cool. Keep talking. All right. Okay, here I come. And Florida State's like, it's like, it's like you see these boxing matches where like the one fighter's just yapping before the fight, and then the other guy's just like, okay. And then first round, wham, and it's over, and the yapper's no longer yapping because he's not conscious anymore. Like, that's kind of how right. Yeah. That's kind of what I feels like going on right now. And I don't think it's smart for Florida State. Like, if they weren't doing all that, I might feel different about this game. But I don't like that. That it's a false enthusiasm is what it strikes me as with Florida State. That's really what it's at for me. It's a false enthusiasm. Like, you're trying to convince yourself that you're good because you're not sure if you are.
Yeah, it 100% gives me shades of the, what year would that have been? 2015, 2016, when Vanderbilt started the season 4-0 because they played, me. And Alabama was also undefeated, and they go 4-0, and one of the Vanderbilt players was like, this is SEC ball, Alabama, you're next. And then the day later, Jalen Hurts got asked about it in his press conference. He was like, we are next on their schedule, and and then they won like 56-0,
51-0 at halftime.
It's just, it gives me shades of that. And when a team has to kind of peacock like that before the game even starts, that shows me that you're verbally trying to make up for some of the deficiencies that you've seen on your team already. When you're doing that before you've even played it, because at least if you can hang your hat on something, if you're that poor Vanderbilt guy that went viral for the wrong reasons back in 2016, at least they were 4-0 at the time. Mm-hmm. It was Vandy and they were the little brother in the SEC for, years, but at least they were 4-0. Mr. Castellanos, you are coming out. Your team that you are now on is coming off of a 2-10 record where they just gave up, and you left the ACC, or you left Boston College, not necessarily by choice.
Yeah. Well, he left the ACC by choice. He didn't leave Boston College by choice.
Yeah. So
I don't know that he had that option to go back. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Brian, let's get into predictions. How do you see this one playing out? This is a pretty lopsided spread here. Being a 14-point dog at home is pretty steep, but what do you think?
I actually have Bama covering in this game. I have Bama winning 31-14. Look, here's why I think Bama's going to be good. I don't think Bama's going to be a dominant team like we've seen from them in the past, where they're just steamrolling everybody. I think this is going to be a Bama team early on that they're just kind of better than you everywhere. I don't know if they're like elite anywhere outside of maybe wide receiver. I don't think they're secondary. This isn't like the 2012 secondary. This isn't like the linebacking core back in the 2009 to 12 era, or even the 15 to 17 era. But it's a good linebacking core. It's a good defensive line. It's not like a line that everybody across the board's a first or second round draft. They're just good everywhere. And I think getting Ryan Grubbs back as an assistant coach was huge going into year 2 now of the Kane Womack era, going into year 2 of the Kalen DeBoer era. Some things I've read about him, he's a lot more in control this year. He's a lot more relaxed and sure of kind of what he's trying to get done there. I think it was a major culture shock for him going from the Northwest to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and culture shock, meaning like SEC fans are a whole lot different than Pac-12 fans. and Sioux Falls fans and Indiana fans and Fresno fans. I think now he's like, okay, trust the process, trust what we do. I think they processed out some guys that needed to be processed out. And now I look at this Bama team, and I think they're going to come out and be good. Ty Simpson's not an elite talent, but he's talented enough. But he's going to be a great point guard. He's going to be their John Stockton this year. And that's all they need. When you've got Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton and guys in an offensive line like the one you have, you don't have to be Tua. You don't have to be Jalen Hurts. You can be Greg McElroy and go out and win a bunch of games on this team. And that's not an insult. Greg McElroy knew exactly what his job was for that 2009 Bama team, and he did it. My job is not to go out there and play hero ball. My job is Julio's open, throw him the ball. This guy's open, throw him the ball, and then let him go do all the hard stuff. And that's all Ty Simpson has to do. And he's a mobile guy, so he can run if you need him to. But I think the offense is going to click a lot better because they now have a quarterback that can be that point guard. And so I like them, and I think Florida State is talented, but it's a bunch of new guys playing together. Like, just that's it. And I think they're going to have some moments where, like, oh, okay, they might be okay, but at the end of the day, I don't think they're nearly good enough in the trenches right now to stay in this game. I think it'll be somewhat close early, Bama with a couple misses, but I think second quarter on, I think Bama takes over. I got the Tide winning 31-14.
You and I see it playing out very similarly. I also have Alabama winning. They have a quarterback under center now that is a better fit for their offense than Jalen Milroe. Not the athlete that he was, but I think that's going to play to the benefit of Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton.
What quarterback is the athlete Jalen Milroe was last year? Yeah, well, there's a lot that can throw better than what Jalen Milroe threw last year. That's the problem.
No, that is facts. It is going to help that this is at Doak. You know, this is still a relatively young-ish team, and they have a new offensive coordinator. There's going to be some communication issues that could happen at a hostile place like Florida State. And look, man, if their fan base emulates any bit of what has been going on with their football team a little bit, it will be a hostile environment until Alabama starts to pull away.
And I think this is their first game with all the new renovations finally done, correct? Isn't Doak now completely done?
Yep.
So I think that'll kind of create some buzz and some energy. Like, the environment at Kansas was awesome last Saturday because, like, there was so much energy about the team and the new stadium and all that kind of stuff. I think you'll see a little bit of that early from Florida State. It's a great point, Troy. I didn't really think about that. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some of that until, again, what do we talk about all the time, Brian? It's the Jimmys and the Joes. And there's just a lot more known commodities on that Crimson Tide sideline. I have Alabama winning this game 31-21 in a game that the final score does not reflect how one-sided this game was. Florida State, for all intents and purposes, is playing for pride this game, and they need to be able to hang their hats on something. I see this being like a 31-14 type of game into the fourth quarter. Alabama's the game is well in doubt. It's clearly an Alabama win, but I think because of some of the injuries that they've sustained so far, with missing some people in the trenches, with Jam Miller being out, I think that Kalen DeBoer might be a little quick to pull the starters in this one. It's like, hey, look, we have a tough conference schedule this year. We're not trying to have these guys play into the fourth quarter, and Florida State's going to hang their hat on, we only lost to Alabama by 10, and they're a top 10 team. And so I think that's what's going to help Florida State only lose this game by 10. I do have them covering in the spread, but I'm not super confident in that because I could see this being a rout. I really could. If I'm wrong, it's going to be on the side of Alabama just takes this and absolutely dominates Florida State.
So let me ask you this question real quick, Trevor. What does Florida State need to do for us to be wrong in our prediction? Because I know for me, I'll say, like, the hard part is I don't love Thomas Castellanos as a starting quarterback. I think that's part of it. Yes, he's a dynamic runner. He had 1,000 yards 2 years ago at BC. That's not going to beat Bama. Look, Diego Pavia is a pretty good athlete. I don't think he's the athlete that Thomas Castellanos is, but what were the plays that Diego did against Bama to hurt them? It was still throwing the football down the field. You still have to be able to do that to beat this Bama team. I don't love their offensive line. I don't. I think that's going to be a problem area. Their defensive line should be better, but how much? I mean, they had more talent on the defensive line last year. Those guys just didn't care to be out there. So, I mean, they don't have the talent they had last year. I think they got guys that are going to give better effort. The coaching situation has been there's just not, like, I look at it, I think the receiving core could be pretty good with Deuce Robinson and Squirrel White and some of those young guys that they have on that team. You know, the young Williams kid, but like their running backs are good, but not special. You know, they're you know, I think their most talented running back's a true freshman. Usman Kroma is their most talented running back. You know, their linebackers are good, not special. Their secondary is good. It's not special. I mean, they got Earl Little, who couldn't get on the field at Alabama, is going to be one of their better DBs. So that's my concern. But what if we're wrong? Like that's my, like, what if we're wrong? What does Florida State need to do for us to look back and say we missed it? What would it be that we would have missed in our prediction if Florida State's going to win this football game? What needs to happen?
Defensively, they have to limit the chunk plays. When Alabama was at peak last year, even with Jalen Milroe, they were ripping off big plays. Why did they get such a big lead on Georgia? It's because Ryan Williams was eating them up. Even before that heroic catch to take the lead and do all these other things, and with like a minute 40 left, he was still giving this defense a lot of problems. Limit the big plays in the run and the pass game. That's going to be huge for Florida State. If you make Alabama, if you put Alabama in a position where they have to sustain drives, that's when it could come up that you have an inexperienced quarterback and a first-year offensive coordinator. Now, I think overall that's going to be a positive. But Brian, to your point about the Miami game, the more plays that you run, the more likely you are to make a mistake. You already have an injury up front. I think Alabama's offensive line is really good. I'm not ready to coin them as the number one offensive line in the country like some other people are. I think they have some questions. And I already had some questions about their ability to run the football before Jam Miller got hurt. And so, to your point, the Brian Jackson kid is a good running back. I don't know if he's to the level yet of what Jam Miller is. So that kind of remains to be seen. But defensively, it's limiting the chunk plays. And then on offense, you have to capitalize. You have to be good in down and distance situations. And I know that might sound a little bit fundamental, but Florida State is going to have to find a way to keep drives alive, because when Alabama puts you in a spot, go back and look at the LSU game. When Alabama puts you in a spot where you're just consistently stacking 3 and outs on top of each other, it's not a team that you can come back and win on. It's just not. Mm-hmm. And even the one team that had success on coming back on Alabama, they were still able to shut the door because they have that star power in Ryan Williams, and now they have Isaiah Horton and Jeremy Bernard. So defensively, limit the big plays. Offensively, you have to win situational football. Be good on third down. Be efficient in the red zone. You have to put points on the board when you have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. I think it has to be Thomas Castellanos is what he says he is. I think that's number one. That means extending plays, ripping off big chunk plays. Bama thinks they have everybody covered. And then all of a sudden he sneaks through the line and scrambles for 20. They're going to have to get their own chunk plays. You talked about limiting the Bama chunk plays. They're going to need their own. They're going to have a couple Thomas Castellanos just throws it up to Deuce Robinson, or Squirrel White makes a catch at 5 yards and makes somebody miss and rips off a 30-yard gain. You're going to need your chunk plays from his scrambles and just throwing the ball down the field. The other side of the ball is you got to get the ball. You got to rattle Ty Simpson in his first career start, get him scrambling early, and get the football. That's your chance. If this comes down to our dudes versus your dudes, it's not going to be close.
Agreed.
It's going to have to be those chunk plays and then forcing mistakes by Ty Simpson. I think that's how Bama wins the game. And then they got to start fast as well, too. Like, you've got to keep that crowd engaged early. That's going to be a big key for Florida State. I don't think they're capable of doing that, but if we're wrong in our prediction, I think those are the reasons why.
Let's talk about the next game that is on Saturday, and it's actually the one that follows the Florida State-Alabama game, and that is the Battle of the Death Valleys, the Battle of the Tigers, if you will. LSU travels down to Clemson, or travels, I guess, technically up to
Battle
Clemson.
of head coaches with Southern accents.
Yep.
One of them's real, one of them's not, but it's still the battle of teams of coaches with Southern accents.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep. Battle of the good old boy and the boy. And you know what? We're going to see what happens on the gridiron on Saturday night. That's for sure. But, this is a top 10 matchup. You have number 4 LSU versus number 4 Clemson versus number 9 LSU. What is LSU ranked? Are they they're 9th, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're correct on that. Let me go check it out again. It's Clemson's 4, LSU is 9. Yeah. 4 versus 9. But 9 at 4. Yeah.
Yep. So Little particulars of this game. It's Saturday, August 30th. It's the night slot. It's on ABC, ESPN. Right now, Clemson is favored. They're 3.5-point favorites as far as the spread is concerned. Clemson money line odds right now are sitting at minus 178. And the over-under, Vegas and FanDuel think that this is going to be a kind of a barn burner of a game. The over-under right now is set at 57.5.
That surprised me. Like the line at like 3.5. I've seen it between 3.5, 4.5. I think FanDuel's at 3.5, and I think what's the other one that ESPN uses? Theirs is at 4.5. So what do they use? Their own little ESPN gambling thing now that they have ESPN Bet, but they have it at 57.5 as well. So if it's going to be within that spread, that means you're thinking it's like a 34 to like 28 type of game, like with those, like, okay, that tells me you think the LSU offense is elite, that they're going to score that much on the Clemson defense, and that you also don't think that the Louisville defense or LSU defense is going to be a whole lot better. Mm-hmm. Like, I was surprised when I saw that over under. I really was.
I was too.
The spread makes sense, but I was a little surprised at the over under.
I was too, especially, I mean, go back and look at other top 10 matchups in week one. It's just the offenses aren't clicking like that. I would understand if the over-under was at 57.5 midway through October. I get that completely, but look, man, there's some Big 12 spreads that weren't at 57.5, and that's a conference that's not really known for their stout defensive play. And so I'm with you. The over-under really, really shocked me. I thought that was intriguing. But, these are two teams, Brian, that are entering the season in a little bit of a different light. For Clemson, it's, hey, can Dabo return to glory? A lot of inferences are being drawn back to, hey, his best teams were stout up front. They were great offensive lines, great defensive lines. They had a lot of talent on the perimeter on both offense and defense. And with LSU, it's not I guess return to limelight, but can Brian Kelly get them to that spot? He's 0-4 in season openers since he's taken over in Baton Rouge. 0-3. Since he's taken over in Baton Rouge.
That's right. Lady that asked the question, they had lost 4 years in a row, not him. They had lost 5 in a row, not him. He's only lost 3. This is year 4 for him.
Gotcha. Well, Brian Kelly is 0-3 in season openers, but LSU has not won a season opener since that 2019 season. And so there's a lot riding on this game for both programs. And again, I know it's week one is not the end-all be-all, and that's consistent for every single one of these games, not just the LSU-Clemson game. But there is going to be a little bit of a stigma around Brian Kelly of, hey, can you win the big one? There's only so long you can keep hanging your hat on beating Alabama in overtime your first year in Baton Rouge. You got to start the season out on the right foot. Brian, this is a big game for both squads.
Dude, something's got to give. Right? I mean, you alluded to it and talked about it. Something's got to give. LSU has lost, 5 straight openers going back to 2020. They lost to Mississippi State in 2020. They lost to UCLA in 2021 out there. In 2022, they lost to Florida State. 23, they lost to Florida State. And then last year, they lost to USC. It's 0-5. Last 4 years, Clemson's 1-3 in openers, with their only win being over Georgia Tech. Something's got to give, right? These are two teams that have struggled to start their seasons off well, that desperately need to start their seasons off well. I think there's a world where both teams come out of this game feeling pretty good about themselves. If it's a legitimate 4-quarter close ball game where Clemson wins and LSU doesn't, but LSU battles and shows that, hey, we're that kind of team. A lot like when Brian Kelly's team lost to Georgia early in 27, they battled, and that team came out of that game as more confident than they were going into the game. Like, hey, guys, yeah, we lost. We made some mistakes. We got to clean up this, and this. But we just went toe-to-toe with a really good football team. We're also a pretty good football team. This is why we got to clean up this, and this. Then all of a sudden, that team just starts rolling and just not only winning games, but blowing people out. I think the next week they went and played Boston College, who at the time had Harold Landry and Zach Allen, 2 high draft picks on the D-line. They ran for over 500 yards in that game. So, I could see that playing out. What both teams have to – Clemson, it's going to be hard for me to convince myself that Clemson can come out of this game with a positive if they lose the game. You're at home. It's a different situation, Trev, but this is a huge game for both teams. As you said, not an end-all, be-all playoff-wise, but I think especially for LSU, a loss puts them in a really tough spot where we can't afford many more slip-ups. I think they can afford definitely one more If they go 10-2 and lose to Clemson, they're a playoff team. Against that schedule, that's a playoff resume. Like they're hosting if they're 10-2, in my opinion.
And most likely playing for the SEC championship. If they're 10-2 with a loss to Clemson, you only have one in-conference loss with that schedule. You're playing for the conference championship.
Which is why I got them hosting. Like if they're 10-2. That's a tough schedule. Clemson, if they lose this game, you don't have a whole lot of more. You can't slip up again. Unless now you have to win the ACC to get in, because you're not getting in. If you're 10-2 and not playing for the ACC title, you're in trouble. Now, it's going to be hard for me to envision them at 10-2 with only one conference loss of not playing for the ACC title, but you get the point. But if you have a couple losses, now you're 9-3, you're not a player. You better hope that you win the ACC title again, because otherwise you're not going to get in, and you're going to travel in week 1 again. So you may still get in a playoff, but you're not getting in. So I think there's a lot more at stake for Clemson in this game. They have a lot more to lose than LSU does, in my opinion, in this game.
Well, especially with the narrative surrounding Clemson coming into this season. You have Cade Klubnik going into his 3rd year as a starter. Garrett Riley is in his 2nd year as the offensive coordinator. You have one of the best offensive lines most experienced offensive lines returning in college football. You have a top 5 receiving core in the country with Antonio Williams and Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore. On defense, you go out and you get Tom Allen from Penn State, and you bring back TJ Parker and Peter Woods and Wade Woodaz and Avian Terrell. Look, and you're at home. There is little, to your point, Brian, there's going to be little to hang your hat on if you're Clemson, if you walk away with this game with a loss. And, flip side of the coin, you take a look at LSU. Yes, Garrett Nussmeier comes back, and their running back's name is Caden Durham, right? Okay. Caden Durham comes back. But you bring in kind of
really
a host
good freshman year last year.
Oh yeah. But you're relying on a host of transfer portal players at some key spots for all of that to kind of work out in your favor. There is not necessarily an excuse, but there's almost like a causality that you can hang your hat on if you're LSU. It's like, well, look, this is it's a 60-40 split on this roster of homegrown kids and transfer portal kids. This is a team that you're not going to want to face come middle to end of October. They're gonna find their footing. For Clemson, it's, hey, this is one of the most experienced rosters in the ACC, if not the country, and you can't beat the makeup of what this roster is. So, I think if Clemson loses this game, I think that tells me a little bit more about Clemson than what it does about LSU slightly. But to your point, Brian, I think that LSU, for a lack of better terms, is kind of playing with house money on this one, despite them being on the road.
But I think that's true when we look big picture for the playoff. But I'll say this from just an LSU standpoint: you lose a 4th straight home opener under Brian Kelly, you worry about the reaction not being as rational within the LSU fan base and in the LSU athletic department. That's where I think it's at stake for LSU. But if we're just saying, everybody, LSU fans handle this game rashly, they lose in a great game. Hey, you know what? Yeah, we lost. Like, I'll tell you, like I had some fun the last couple of years going into LSU post-game shows and just trolling all the people that talk trash about me when I said, hey, I don't think Brian Kelly's going to championship. I won't be doing that this year. I definitely wouldn't be doing that if they lose a great game to Clemson. And if I jump into it, it'll be like, hey, y'all should be proud of this football. LSU's going to be a problem. If LSU takes Clemson down to the wire and loses, I'll be like, look, this is going to be a good football team. Because they're a rebuilt offensive line. They're still rebuilding the roster in the secondary and on defense. There's just a lot of things about this team. You're saying, I don't think LSU is going to be in the peak form in week 1. If they beat Clemson, I think the narrative completely changes, in my opinion, about this LSU football team. And we have to start saying, maybe all the people we thought were overhyping LSU were right. And they are that team. They are a legit SEC title contender, because I do think this is a very good Clemson team. And if LSU goes on the road and beats them in the opener, okay, LSU's a problem. My prediction of not having LSU in the playoff might look real bad in week 1. That's what's at stake for LSU. So, they don't have a lot to lose as long as it's competitive. They have a lot to gain. Clemson's the other way around. I don't know that Clemson has a lot to gain from this win, other than good win over a top 10 team, but they're supposed to win that game. They lose, all of a sudden the narrative about Clemson, I think, completely changes. And you're like, look, they're not that team anymore. The 2018 Clemson team wouldn't have lost at home to LSU. The 2016 Clemson team wouldn't, and they wouldn't have. And so now it's like, okay, they haven't turned the corner. So that's what I think is at stake for this game, Trev. Let's get into our prediction for it, and just quickly the matchup. So what's your score for this game, and how do you actually see it playing out?
Yeah, score for this game, I do have Clemson winning, and I have Clemson winning 28-17. Now, I know Insured by Big is in the chat. I think this game will be closer than what the final score indicates. I see this being a 21-17 ball game very late into this one. I do. But Garrett Nussmeier has had a habit of turning the ball over in some big moments, and I think Clemson kind of seals this one with a late pick six. I do. Now, I think that I do like the talent on LSU's roster. This is coming from somebody who I have them ranked in my preseason top 10 when we did it coming out of spring. You know, when we did it coming out of spring practice, I thought LSU was a top 10 team in the country. There's just a lot of questions that I have about their roster when you are relying on a host of transfer portal players on offense and on defense. It's very similar to the conversation that we had about Miami's transfer portal players. They're talented. They have a lot of skill, and I do think that they are improvements from what they had last season. But I don't know if that's going to click in week one. That's the lens that we have to look at this through. We have to look at this and say, will LSU on offense and defense with some of their transfer players look like how they're going to look in October on August 30th? And so I'm going with Clemson in this one. They're the home team. And it also goes into Brian Kelly has yet to prove me that he can go and get this win. This win early in the season, top 10 matchup. This is just something historically that he hasn't. And I'm going to give the edge to Dabo Swinney in that light too. There's a little bit more continuity on the Clemson sideline. So I'm going with the Tigers from Carolina to get this one taken care of.
What do you see as being the primary driver of why LSU only gets to 17? Other than, is it just the turnovers? Is that really what it boils down to for you?
I don't think their offensive line is going to perform well against Peter Woods and TJ Parker. I think that they're going to give them a lot of fits. And then they also added I think Cole Brevard from Purdue as well. Yeah. It's one of Cole Brevard or the other defensive line transfer that came in from Purdue. But
he went to Texas. They got Bernard. You're talking about Clemson or Will Helt? You're talking about Clemson?
Will Helt. Yeah, Will Helt.
Yeah. Cole Brevard went to Texas.
That's right. So they also have Will Helt on their defensive line as well. And so it's going to be a lot of that. I think that Nussmeier's only turnover might be that one. They're just going to have him rattled, and he's going to get to the point in the game where he's going to feel the need to go and make a play and force a pass, and that's what's going to seal it. But for all intents, I think it's going to be a really good game.
There's a couple things for me. I have Clemson winning 30-24. I think LSU's offense will be a little bit more effective. I do think this is going to be a good football game. I think this will be a back and forth game. I think LSU. So here's the thing. It's going to come down to line play for both teams. For Clemson, you have to win up front against a completely remade offensive line. Number one, it's important for this game. You can't let Garrett Nussmeier have time in the pocket to get comfortable, to go through his progressions, to step into those downfield throws, because he's got a big arm. But if he's throwing off his back foot, if he's having to rush through his reads, then he's not going to be able to get the ball downfield to his talented receivers. And he's got some talented receivers, Chris Hilton, Barian Brown, Nick Anderson. And that's not even talking about Aaron Anderson in slot. I love their young tight end, Trey'Dez Green, who's like 6'7". He can run. I love Caden Durham as a runner. If LSU has success, they're going to have to be balanced and be able to run the ball, take some of that pressure off him. But you got to protect him. And that's the big concern I have about a remade offensive line for LSU is, can you protect the quarterback? And for Clemson, if you can't get after the quarterback with this line against this line, which is brand new, is it going to be another year of the D-line underachieving? Like, there's a lot of hype about TJ Parker and Peter Woods, understandably so. A lot of hype about Will Helt. The D-line for Purdue last year was god-awful with Will Helt and Cole Brevard, who apparently are going to be huge reasons why a couple top 5 teams have a chance to win a national title. Like, how's that possible when their defense was garbage last year with those two guys? Different story for a different day. I understand coaching had a lot to say with that. But my thing is, with the D lineman you've got coming back and that you added, If you can't win the battle against this LSU team who's completely remade their line, what's that say about where your defense is right now? They have to win that battle. And if they do, LSU will get their points. They'll get their plays because they're going to have the athletes where a slant route turns into a big play against the Clemson secondary that I still have questions about. That's the big key for LSU. If you can give Garrett Nussmeier time, they can go at this Clemson defense because I do think they have the skill advantage on the outside. You know this. I love Avian Terrell, but I don't love the rest of the Clemson secondary. It's solid, but it's not elite. And so that's going to be the key for me. Can you protect Garrett Nussmeier and give Caden Durham some room to work? You don't have to dominate Clemson. Just get a body on a body like we talk about with Notre Dame. Give him time to throw. Stay out of the 3rd and longs when he's really – 3rd and 10 or 11 is going to scare the heck out of me if I'm Brian Kelly because that's when Garrett Nussmeier is going to try to make something happen. And sometimes he will, sometimes he'll throw a pick. But if you can protect him, then I think LSU can move the ball and score in Clemson. And if they're going to pull off the upset, it's going to be because their offensive line is better than people think. That's Brian Kelly recently said, our offensive line is going to be really good. Paraphrasing, he said that about the 2021 offensive line as well. But if he's right and they are better than people think, then I think LSU could pull off this upset because I do think they have some matchup advantages over Clemson on the perimeter with their offense. Now, here on the other side, however, the LSU front has got to get out. It's the same story there. If Cade Klubnik has time to drop back and throw the ball, LSU improved their secondary. They're still not better than the receivers that Clemson's putting out on the field on Saturday. They're going to have to make Cade Klubnik throw quick game all game long. Get the ball out quickly because we're getting pressure on you with Harold Perkins from the Star, with Patrick Payton, with Bernard Gooden, with some of the guys they brought in. You're going to have to, and then, of course, Coach Baker's going to have to scheme up some pressures on Cade Klubnik. I'm going to come after him all game long. I'm going to try to force him into mistakes. I am not at all scared of Clemson running the football on me at all. I'm really not. I'm not going to let their receivers beat me. And the way that they're going to beat me is we can't get to the quarterback and Cade Klubnik's got time to throw the football. We're toast. Yes, our secondary is good, but that's one of the 3 or 4 best receiving corps in all college football, and they're like 4 or 5 deep. But the 3 guys at the top are legit ball players. So I'm going to come at Cade Klubnik and try to get him out of rhythm. Don't let him get comfortable. Because you've seen it when Cade's getting blitzed a lot, he gets real, I'll say happy feet, but you could see everything speeds up in his head. And he starts getting real, and he'll scramble too early. He won't wait for guys to come open, and it can kill drives. That's how you got to get to them. That's going to be the key for this LSU defense is go after him, speed up his process, and get him to rush through his throws. If you can do that, then you can keep this Clemson offense off the field. South Carolina did that. You look at Cade's numbers, you're like, they only scored 14 points with those numbers, but it was a bunch of kind of shallow numbers. It's like, get that ball out quick and you get there, but you're not going to make enough plays down the field because we're eventually going to get to you with the pressure and stop the drive. And that's what I think LSU's key is going to be as well.
Wild card for this game is Cade Klubnik's legs. Has LSU finally figured out how to defend quarterbacks who are athletic?
Right. Brian Kelly admitted that in his press conference. Did you see that? Mm-hmm. He starts rounding off all the mobile quarterbacks and be able to stop. And I'm like, bro, you can go back to Notre Dame and just keep doing this because this has been a problem for you for a minute.
Yep, 100%.
It's been a problem for a lot of people, but especially LSU.
Now, Cade's not the runner of some of the other mobile quarterbacks they have faced or will face this season. I mean, this season they're facing, Lenore Sellers, and they're going up against, Marcel Reed, and he's not that type of runner, but he can make plays with his legs. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they defend that as well. That could be a hidden wild card. I'm not saying he's going to go for 100 yards rushing in this game, but that could be a difference maker in certain plays. But I agree with you. I do think it's going to be a good game. My score is somewhat lopsided, big picture, but we're talking about, in my prediction, the difference of one play.
Yeah.
And so I think this could end up being a really, really good game. If I'm wrong, it's going to be more on the side of to your prediction.
Agree.
Of it being
I think if we're wrong, I think if I'm wrong, I think you and I see the game playing out similarly. I just think there's going to be a little bit more moving the ball for LSU. I'm still not completely sold on this Clemson defense.
Fair.
I get all the hype. I get all the love. They've got talent. They just haven't played like a great defense. They just haven't. I mean, look, once SMU got rolling in the ACC title game, Clemson had no answers. They had no answers for Texas. Like, this has been an issue for a while for this defense. Like, yeah, they got all the talent in the world now. You brought in Tom Allen to fix that, but I still got to see it, Trev. And that's the thing is, that's why I keep going back to this. It's really going to come down to which offensive line plays the best. Because if the LSU offensive line can hold up in pass pro and protect Garrett Nussmeier, I think they can give Clemson some problems on the perimeter. If they can't, then it's going to be a long day. That's what I think is going to happen. So it's going to be a fascinating first game. I got the Clemson Tigers. Definitely got the Tigers winning the game. So I know I'm going to get that one right. Got the Tigers winning. I have Clemson 30-24. I think that the offensive line will be the reason I'm wrong. If I'm wrong and LSU wins, it'll be because their offensive line plays well, wins the battle against the Clemson D-line, which gives Nussmeier time to throw, and he has a big game. Like 300-plus yards, 3 touchdowns, like that'll be the reason that LSU wins. And then they pressure Cade Klubnik a lot. Because, like, remember last year when Clemson kept having guys open against Georgia, but he couldn't get the ball to him because he didn't have time to throw? That it's that kind of thing.
Brian, let's talk the last major marquee game, and it's actually the first one that kicks off. It's number 1 Texas traveling up to Columbus to take on the number 3 defending national champions, the Ohio State Buckeyes. And this is a big one. I don't remember the last time a number 1 versus a number 3 played each other in week 1 of the season. I don't know if it's happened in my lifetime, but some particulars of the game. It's going to be Saturday, August 30th, noon kickoff to the dismay of some. It's going to be on Fox. Right now, FanDuel sees this being an extremely close game. Spread right now is in favor of Ohio State at -1.5. Money line is also in favor of Ohio State. Odds are at -120 for that. Over under for this game is at 47.5. So they're seeing this play out very similar to how the semifinals played out, with this kind of being a lower scoring slugfest, a little bit more points scored. But this is a big one, Brian. And there's a lot of questions on both sides that won't be completely answered after this game, but there's going to be no time for, well, we'll see how things play out, because each unit's going to get tested right away.
Dude, I think this is really going to be a fun game. I do. I think this is 2 legitimate top 5 football teams. I think this is 2 young potential stars at quarterback. I think this is very talented. There's going to be athletes all over the field, and surprisingly shaky line play on both sides of the ball as well, because both teams are completely remaking their offensive and defensive lines. It's going to be fascinating. The crowd is going to be loud. There's going to be so much hype about Texas going into this game, as we've already seen. There's two football coaches that know how to win. Obviously, Ryan Day is coming off a national title. Sarkis had Texas in back-to-back Final Fours. And this is going to be a great college football game. And I am going to go back and look and see when the last we saw 2 top 3 teams play this early in the season. I think this is going to be great. I mean, this game overshadows a number 6 Notre Dame against number 10 Miami and a number 4 Clemson against number 9 LSU. Those games aren't getting enough talking about as they normally would in week 1, because everybody's focused on this game. And you kind of understand why. 2 storied programs, 2 blue bloods. There's nothing not to love about this matchup. And 2 teams that I both have in the college football playoff, and I believe you have in the college football playoff. And they played in a great game last year in the semifinals. I mean, look, Texas is first and goal inside the 2, right? I mean, weren't they just outside the 1-yard line? And you tie this sucker up, who knows what's going to happen? That 28-14 score doesn't tell the story of how close that game was. It was a great game. What's going to happen? So I can't wait for this game, Trev. And it's one of the reasons I'm glad Notre Dame plays on Sunday this weekend, is because I get to sit back and watch all these other games without working and being in work mode. I can't wait to watch this game. It's going to be a very good football game, in my opinion. I'll be disappointed if it's not. I just think it will be. I think these are 2 really good football teams that I'm looking forward to watching play. And it's also what's going to be great about this weekend in college football in general, Trev. And this game, to me, exemplifies this more than any other game. There's a changing of the guard at quarterback happening in college football in 2025.
Yep.
And we're seeing a lot of older players have been around a while. There's a couple left. There's Cade Klubnik, and who we talked about in the last preview. There's Carson Beck in Miami, who's been around a while. But this year is sort of the changing of the guard. It's the Arch Manning era, the Julian Sand era, the CJ Carr era, the DJ Lagway era. There's a lot of these young quarterbacks that are emerging, and these are the guys who are going to have the giant impact on how this season goes. Dante Moore at Oregon. I mean, there's just so much of it in this game is the big matchup where you're seeing two of these. The LSU Clemson game is two of the few sort of old heads left. And then Notre Dame is sort of an old head and a new guy. This game is the new era coming right at you on both sides of the ball. Man, and I don't know if you can tell, Trev, but I'm super fired up about this football game. Both teams have question marks as well. And we finally get a chance to see who did the best job this offseason of filling holes and answering questions. I can't wait. Cannot wait.
Oh, this game's going to be electric by all accounts. I'm excited for it. I mean, I've been talking about it all week. I got all the guys coming over. It's just going to be a weekend of, guys being dudes. We're eating some good food, and we're going to be watching a lot of good college football games. And I'm very happy that we get to kick the day off with this one. It would have been tough to wait all day for this. Now, the magnitude of the game would have been exemplified even more if it, night game in the shoe, number 1 versus number 3. I get that. Defending national champs, rematch of the college football playoff semifinal in a game that I also believe was closer than what the final score indicated. But look, man, this is huge. This is absolutely huge. And when I look at this matchup, I start diving in. And for a while it was kind of a coin flip. There's a part of me, and this is kind of the human aspect of this. There's a part of me that doesn't want to think Texas is going to be as good because they're already being presumed to be that good. They're the number 1 team in the country. They have the best quarterback of all time in the history of the human species. They
from the greatest quarterback fan in the history of human species. Yes,
exactly. Like they have the number 1 D line in the country, the number 1 linebacking core in the country, number 1 secondary in the country, the number 1 locker room in the country, the number 1 stadium seat capacity in the country. Like, it's just everything that we've heard this offseason is gearing towards Texas. So it was hard to kind of remove that hat and then evaluate this game for what it should be. On the flip side, Ohio State won the national championship. This isn't the same team. Same program. It's not the same team. You have 15 different starters on offense and defense. Now, a lot of those guys are experienced, but where I think the bigger question mark is look, the coordinators, offense and defense at Texas, are going into their 5th years, respectively. Their offensive coordinator is going into his 5th year, and their defensive coordinator is going into his 5th year, whereas Ohio State will be relying on Matt Patricia, who has not coached at the college level since 2004 when he was a GA at Syracuse. Offensively, I'm not really that concerned about Brian Hartline stepping into that role. He's had it before. He was kind of like the co-offensive coordinator last year. There are some things operationally that I do get concerned with him as the offensive coordinator, but I've never been worried about Ohio State's offense big picture. When I look at matchups in this game, this is going to come down to, in my eyes, the run game of Ohio State. If Ohio State can run the football, I don't see a scenario where they lose. There's just a lot of look, man, there's a lot of people like Ohio State's going to win. They have Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate. Good night. It's like, well, agreed. Absolutely agreed. But in 2023, they had Marvin Harrison Jr. and they had Emeka Egbuka, and they had, in 2022, you had Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. Ohio State has been at their best when they've been able to run the football. I have in my lifetime of being a college football fan, I have never had questions about Ohio State's ability to throw the football. Never has been, and until proven otherwise, that will not be a question for me. What sets it aside? In 2023, I think Kyle McCord caught a little bit too much flack for, Ohio State underwhelming. People are quick to forget that running back room consisted of Mayan Williams and Chip Trainum and an injured Travion Henderson. Their ability to run the football is going to dictate how successful that they're going to be in this game. It's not a mystery that you win a national championship last season. You had 2 1,000-yard rushers. You had an extremely competitive playoff game in 2019 against Clemson, who had yet to lose a game under Trevor Lawrence at that point in time. You had a 2,000-yard rusher in J.K. Dobbins. And when you win the national championship in 2014, you had Ezekiel Elliott. So this matchup to me, and the key to the game, will Texas be able to stop the run? And will Ohio State be able to run the football? Because I don't have questions about Jeremiah Smith. He's the best player in college football. And I'm not shy of saying that. He's going to get his. I don't think Texas can repeat, nor do I think they should repeat their game plan around Jeremiah Smith on Saturday. That's not my question. To me, this comes down to, will Texas be able to stop the run, and will Ohio State be able to run the football? That's going to be huge.
It is. Look, a lot of what we've talked about in a lot of these matchups, Trevor, come down to line play. And a lot of these game day, these non-Notre Dame Miami matchups, because they return a lot of linemen, a lot of these things are these rebuilt lines on either side of the ball. Ohio State gets a little bit of an advantage because of all the injuries they had last year on their own offensive line, that a lot of the guys that are going to start now who didn't start last season got a lot of important playing time. So you look at Carson Hinsman, he got beat out, didn't start last year. You brought in Seth McLaughlin, but then he gets hurt last game of the regular season. Carson's got to play the whole postseason. You get the left tackle, Josh Jackson gets hurt. That was Josh Jackson, right? Or is it Johnson? So he gets hurt. So you move Donovan Jackson out to left tackle. And then, Austin Saraveld gets playing time. Luke Montgomery gets playing time. They kind of rotate that spot. And then, so you lose your right tackle, you lose your left tackle, you lose your center. But those guys have kind of, to a degree, been replaced already with the exception of the left tackle. And then you bring in a couple transfers. And then one of the guy from Rice, who we said all offseason I'm not a big fan of, he gets beat out by Austin Saraveld, who then moves from right tackle to left tackle. Now the two transfers are in at right tackle battling. So, that's where I think Ohio State has a little bit of an advantage, as I think there's more of a known commodity from their offensive line. Texas also didn't rebuild their offensive line through the portal, and I kind of give Stark a little bit of credit for that to a degree. I think they brought in one portal guy. Didn't he get hurt? Isn't that the guy that got hurt for Texas was the transfer guy? But so they're going to be an all homegrown offensive line, but it's inexperienced. The good news for them is they're going to get a defensive line at Ohio State that's also a little bit brand new. So that's what makes this such an intriguing matchup, Trev, is we know what these two teams were last year, but they're going to look way different. Ohio State, brand new backfield, elite receiving core. Texas lost some key guys at receiver, a lot of young guys coming back. Running back room should be good. Brand new tight ends for both teams. They both went to the portal, got new tight ends. They both have talented young quarterbacks with a lot of hype. They both have to kind of remake parts of their defensive line. For Ohio State, it's all of it. For Texas, it's the interior. They should both be really good at linebacker. They both have a lot of talent coming back in the secondary. There's a lot of things that these teams have in common, Trevor, and they're both supposed to be high-powered offensive football teams. And so I think the matchup's going to be great, but it's still football, man, and it comes down to whose remade lines are going to play the best. This would be, that's what it's going to come down to. This isn't a 7-on-7 game. And if it was a 7-on-7 game, this might be number 1 and number 2 teams in the country if it's just a 7-on-7 game. But with the line play, both have a lot of questions they got to answer. And I think whoever's team answers those questions best in the lines is going to be key. Here's the one wild card for me in this game. I still don't know what their defense is going to look like being led by Matt Patricia. As you know, I've not hidden it. That was one of the most head-scratching offseason hires that there is. And it's going to go one of two ways. Ryan Day is going to look like a genius for tapping into the NFL and getting a guy like Matt Patricia who's going to have this defense rolling after Jim Knowles is gone. Or you're going to look back and say, that was a big mistake. And that's not a shot at Ryan Day. Nick Saban's made mistakes like that. Urban Meyer made mistakes like that. Remember when he thought, it's a good idea to promote Ed Warner and Tom Beck to be my offensive coordinators. I think I should hire Everett Withers to be my defensive coordinator. All great coaches make those mistakes. They just fix them early. So how well that decision ends up being, or how smart that decision ends up being or not, is going to not only determine how Ohio State's season goes, but how this game is going to go. Because if he is who I think he is, he's going to have some changes. He's going to have some challenges with Steve Sarkisian. Because the thing is, Sark's an NFL guy too. He knows what Patricia's going to be bringing to the table. But can you protect the quarterback? Can you get run lanes going? That's going to be it. I think this is going to be a great battle. But I think that right there is a very underrated part of this game. Can Matt Patricia go toe-to-toe with Steve Sarkisian and have Texas in some problems where you can get the young quarterback a little bit off his game, shut down the run game? I think that's going to be the key for me, Trev.
Well, let's get into some predictions, Brian. to wrap up some of these marquee matchups. I'll go ahead and dive in feet first. My prediction for this game, I have Texas winning on the road 24-21. Here's why. You mentioned something that I was going to bring up in kind of what my prediction was going to be, and these are very, for all intents and purposes, very similar teams. Remade in the trenches, a lot of talent at linebacker, talented in the secondary, is supposed to be two high-powered offenses. So why do I have the confidence that Texas gets this win on the road? This comes down to the coordinators, and it's something that I've been saying consistently throughout the offseason. I have zero questions about the talent on either program. I have no questions around the talent. I have questions around the experience, but the talent itself, I don't have questions about. So what am I putting my faith into? I'm putting my faith into the fact that Kyle Flood is going into his 5th year, and a lot of these homegrown guys, they're not having to learn anything new. It's in an experienced offensive line, but it's a system that they've already been in defensively. There's some pieces that you miss. Losing Andrew Makuba, and losing Jahdae Barron is going to hurt. But you're inserting players that were a part of this system last year, and you do still bring back guys like, Michael Taffy and Malik Muhammad. So you look at the other side for Ohio State, the talent is through the roof on that defense. Kenyatta Jackson, you have, and his name is escaping me right now, the linebacker stepping in for Cody Simon. He's another 6'4".
Arvell Reese.
You have Jermaine Matthews stepping in. Devin Sanchez was my Big Ten Rookie of the Year. He's an extremely talented player. Talented enough where the holding king and Jermaine Matthews can't really take their foot off the gas this upcoming season, because there's a true freshman that can step into the starting lineup and absolutely not skip a beat. And so he's somebody that all the talent in the world, you bring back Caleb Downs. He's another one of the top players returning in college football. But what that comes down to is I don't know what to expect, or what even a Matt Patricia college defense is going to even look like. But I do know what a Pete Kwiatkowski defense looks like at Texas. Texas, Steve Sarkisian, they have experience going on the road and playing in a hostile environment early in the season. He goes on the road and beats a Nick Saban-led Alabama team in Tuscaloosa. Not an easy task. So this isn't going to be an environment where he gets overwhelmed. I think that there's going to be some things operationally on Ohio State's defense that just isn't going to look correct in week 1. This is a team that nobody's going to want to play come November. But it's a young quarterback starting. It's at home. There's a little bit more distractions at home opposed to when you're away, contrary to what a lot of people believe. I think all of that plays a factor, but the biggest separator for me is the coordinator battle. I have Texas winning this one 24-21 in just an electric game.
This is the one that we don't have the same prediction, Trev. This is one where I actually think Ohio State's going to win this game. For me, it really boiled down to who's the home team. That's what it came down to for me. Here's the matchups that I think are intriguing. A lot of what you said, we agree with this matchup in a lot of ways. Just the outcome is where we're different. Couple things that I think play into Ohio State's favor. Honestly, if I had more confidence in the defensive coordinator for Ohio State, I might actually predict a more convincing win, just because I do have some questions about the Texas offensive line and how good it's going to be in game 1. I think there's some questions about, okay, they've got talented receivers, but none of them have had to be the dude. And you're going against what I believe is going to be a very good secondary at Ohio State. Like, I know we joke about the holding king with Davison and Igbinosun, and it's true. He holds like crazy. Still a talented football player. And it's kind of like, you don't need to do all that holding. You're a pretty good football player. But you still have him. You have Jermaine Matthews. You've got Caleb Downs. This is going to be a very talented secondary, very good linebacker room. You got a remade defensive line, but it's still a very talented defensive line, in my opinion. And so I think as long as Ohio State can hold up middle with their D tackles, that's the kind of the question mark that I have of how good are they going to be up the middle. I think they're going to be solid, but can they be better than solid against a pretty talented interior for the Texas offensive line, even though it's inexperienced at certain spots. I think that's the matchup. So I think that when I look at this matchup for Ohio State, I think this is one of the few secondaries can say, hey, we can run with your DBs, because a lot was made about how Texas secondary last year did a pretty good job of keeping Ohio State in check with their pass game. And I'm like, yeah, they did a pretty darn good job of that. But let's also not forget that Ohio State did a pretty good job for the most part of keeping Texas's pass game in check too. They gave a few big plays, but like they also made some mistakes, some key moments. And I think also when you look at that game, Trev, and I talk about like what was the key to that game, I think Ohio State's ability came out and said, look, you're gonna hit some throws. We know you're gonna hit some throws, no matter what we do to try to take away your run game, you're gonna hit some throws. Pass game, you're gonna hit some throws. So what we're gonna do is make sure you can't run the football. And we're gonna put you in some tough spots. And it was the throws that the throws that hurt them were not necessarily the throws that Quinn Ewers made, because when he made throws, I thought he did a pretty good job. It was the throws he didn't make, the throws he was unwilling to make. And I think that factored in a lot into that game. The 4 sacks were a big part of that game. It was those plays that allowed them where he didn't have guys getting open. I just look at this game, Trev, and I like this Ohio State secondary. It's more proven. I think their defensive line, as long as everybody's healthy and they're coordinated well, can give the Texas O-line problems, but Texas is still going to hit some big plays. On the other side of the ball, I think Texas also has a very talented secondary, but there's a couple spots where I'm like, okay, this guy's new. How's he going to be? How's the corner opposite Malik Muhammad going to be? I love Derek Williams as a young safety. Is he going to be – he's played a lot of football now going into his 3rd year. You got Trey Moore going from edge to Sam. How's he going to be with his run fits? And, there's so many things like that for Texas where it's like, okay, you were a pretty darn good defense last year, but you got a brand new remade middle of your defensive line. You've got one of the best edge players in the country, if not the best edge player in the country, but the rest of your D-line is like, okay, you could be good, but I need to see it. And I just feel like Ohio State is going to be able to control the line of scrimmage enough where they're going to be able to hammer the ball with James Peoples early, protect Will Peoples, and I just think at the end of the day that receiving corps is just too good. You kept him in check with Jahdae Barron last year and Andrew Makuba. You don't have Jahdae Barron anymore. And anyone who's paying attention to the Broncos this year knows, he's killing it with the Broncos. You lost a pretty good football player. Can you keep Jeremiah Smith in check again without that? You know what I love about Ohio State? There was one of their receivers was named the captain. Do you know which one it was?
Brandon Ennis.
Not Cardinal Tate, not Jeremiah Smith. So that tells you the work that Brandon Ennis has put in this offseason as well. So, and I think the other thing too is Ohio State's offense last year, one of the things that I felt they were really missing that's been a key part of their offense in the past was a legit threat on the inside at tight end. With all due respect to G. Scott, who had a couple tough catches last year, a couple clutch catches, but he caught 27 passes for 253 yards. You look 2 years ago with Cade Stover, 41 catches for 576 yards. You look at even the team in 2022 that had 2,000-yard receivers with Marvin and Egmeka. Cade Stover still had 36 catches for 406 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was a clutch player. Jeremy Ruckert on those teams in 2021. So I think Ohio State having a tight end that can really impact the game is sort of the missing piece to this offense. To really kind of take that step with Julian Sands. So that's where it's at for me. And I think the other thing, too, that helps them is his running ability is going to be something that's going to help him a lot early. He doesn't have to be locked in, completing 70% of his passes to make plays. He'll bring a little street ball element that I think could be good for this offense. I think it's going to be a back-and-forth game. But at the end of the day, I just think Ohio State's weapons on the perimeter are going to make more plays than Texas's weapons on the perimeter. And I think that Ohio State, I have more faith that Ohio State's offensive line is going to do enough to open up a more balanced offense than Texas as well. That's what's going to come down to. And that's where that home edge also factors into me. So I've got the Buckeyes winning 27-24. I could see this game going either way. That's obviously, I think most people can say that. That's not a hot take. That's not something everybody says. This is 2 great teams. Could go either way. I am going with the home team, but also the team that I think is going to be better in the trenches. That ultimately is what it boils down to for me. I think it's going to be a great game. I could see it being higher scoring than this. I really could. I could see this being a game that's 34-31. I'm going with some mistakes keeping it scored and 2 good defenses keeping the score down a little bit. But I could see these I'd look at the skill on both sides of the ball and I'm like, good Lord, this could be a track meet. It really could. But I think there's too much talent on defense for it to become that. But we'll see. We'll see.
Love it. We see it playing outside of the outcome. We see it playing out in a very similar light. It's going to be a fun game. It's going to be really awesome to watch. It's going to be very, very close. Photo finish at the end, that's for sure. Well, hey, listen, Brian, before we get out of here today, I know we wanted to cover some of the other games that we're keeping our eye on. And, we're not going to go into an in-depth breakdown like we did with the other ones, but, loaded slate on Saturday, Brian. What are some of the other games you're keeping your eye on, man?
Well, one game I'm keeping my eye on is tonight, Trev, and that is the Boise State at South Florida game. I'm really curious to see what Boise State looks like without, obviously, Ashingenti. You're going into year 2 of Alex Golesh at South Florida. I really want to see what that looks like. That's going to be an interesting game. And then also I get a chance to see CJ Bailey play tonight. And I love watching CJ Bailey play, so I'll be checking that out. But on Saturday, Trev, there's some really intriguing games on Friday night. Auburn at Baylor. I think this is a big game. I'm very curious to see. Big 12's got a couple chances to have some big wins on Friday night. You've got Baylor hosting Auburn and Colorado hosting Georgia Tech. Very curious to see how those two games go. Syracuse at Tennessee. How's Steve Angeli going to do against Tennessee? What's the quarterback situation at Tennessee? Joey Aguilar won that battle. Very, very curious to see kind of what that looks like as well. Those are a couple others that I'm looking at, Trevor, as I kind of get ready for this weekend and just things that I want to see. We get a chance to see the Bryce Underwood era kickoff at Michigan. How's that going to look? So those are some of the things that I kind of have my eye on, Trevor, when I look at this opening weekend. And then there's one Pac-12 game, and I'm going to say Pac-12 game on Saturday night that I think is going to be very interesting, and that's Utah at UCLA. I really think this Utah team could be dangerous. If they are, then we'll start to see it. If they go out and struggle against UCLA, then it may just be like the moment is past for Kyle Whittingham. But if he's going to be able to rally, puke and rally at Utah, baby, then it's going to be – we're going to see that some fireworks on Saturday night, Utah, UCLA. How about you, Trev?
Yeah, we share a lot of the same games in common. Tonight I'm going to be keeping my eye on the Boise State game for sure, Nebraska at Cincinnati, that's for sure. And then Friday night, same with you, Auburn, Baylor. I'm also keeping my eye on Georgia Tech at Colorado. I think that's going to be a really fun game. And then I'm going to keep my eye on Michigan State just to see what they look like. I know they were a sleeper team in the Big Ten for you and I this year, Brian. And so, they're going to beat Western Michigan. The question is just by how much, not if. And I'm really
does that offense look like it's finally clicking?
Yes.
Like, you know what I mean? Like they beat a MAC team last year, Trev, but just watch. Didn't they beat Western to start the season, or was it Central? But it's just you're watching a game and you're just like, they're going to win this game, but it's just kind of sloppy. It was Florida Atlantic. That's who it was. It was Florida Atlantic. And you're just like, they're going to win, but it's just sloppy. Do they come out clicking in this game? I'm with you, Trev. That's a great one. That's going to be a fun one. And then again, Saturday, keeping my eye on Syracuse at Tennessee. Outside of that, look, man, I'm going to see how Iowa State handles success. That was kind of the downfall of a lot of different teams last year. They play South Dakota. I don't think they lose to South Dakota, especially not at home. But you had a lot of travel. You were in Ireland less than a week ago. You have to come back home. You're playing at home. You had a big conference win. Do you look like you handle success and you keep rolling, or do you beat South Dakota and it looks, kind of like how Notre Dame beat Toledo in 2021? Like, does it look kind of like that? And so keeping my eye on that one, not too closely, but it's one that's going to be fun to watch. And then I have my eye on, and here's a little nugget for you guys for tonight's show, but I have my eye on this New Mexico at Michigan game. Here's why. The spread right now for that game is at 34.5 in favor of Michigan. Michigan scored over 30 points once last year. And so there might be something that I'm going to be keeping my eye on for that game. That one's going to be interesting. And then, I'll be watching Virginia Tech at South Carolina on Sunday. That's two parts as to why. One, I'm going to need something to do so I don't bite off my own hand waiting for Notre Dame to kick off against Miami. But I am also interested to see what does Virginia Tech look like this year. And then, is South Carolina's offense going to be able to put it all together with Lenora Sellers? Can he stay healthy? What is that team going to look? What's their defense going to look like? And so that one's going to be really interesting. But look, man, all this is telling me is that there's going to be football on our TVs for 4 straight days starting at 5:30.
Man.
5. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then there's TCU North Carolina Monday night.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. 5 straight days of college football, baby. I'm gonna have to tell Ange, hey, look, I know I'm supposed to be taking care of you the next few days, but you're good now. You're a week removed from your surgery. I think you're ready to start taking care of yourself. Like, I'm watching football. Let's go.
Oh man, it's gonna be a great weekend.
I want to stay married. I'm not gonna actually do that. I'm just gonna say that in the show and then be like, honey, what do you need? What can I do for you when I get
I get that. Oh, I get that completely. As fun as it's gonna be to watch Bill Belichick fumble through his first season as a head coach on Monday night. My 1-year marriage anniversary is also on Monday, right. So it's gonna be tough to.
Yeah. Oh yeah, honey, that's a great story.
Yeah.
What you looking on your phone? Oh, nothing. Just seeing if Brian
needs
I'm
anything. Waiting for your gift to get in. Yeah, don't worry. Well, listen, folks.
Order this to send to my house, please. Yes.
Look what I got you, babe. It's an Irish Breakdown quarter zip. Happy anniversary.
I don't know why he's sending extra large. I'll have to talk to him about that.
Oh, man. That Brian.
I told him not to freaking order an extra large.
Oh, man.
Yeah. 8 o'clock tonight, though, man. I'm excited for you guys' show. You're going to have football on in the background while that show's going on, which is going to be awesome.
Yep, we sure are. 8 p.m. tonight on CFB Nation. We are going live with the second edition of the Spread Option, so be sure to tune into that. You got any friend? This isn't just a Notre Dame specific show. We'll talk about Notre Dame on the show, not just Notre Dame specific. So you got friends that like to bet. You got friends that want to try to get into betting. You got friends that don't bet at all. Tune into the show tonight. There's going to be some awesome nuggets in there. It's going to be me and Vince
CFB Nation. Just so we're clear, That's on the CFB Nation channel, just so you guys understand. That's why you need to be subscribed to that. Bill Bender and Bill Trotri went live today on CFB Nation. They made their predictions for this weekend's games, talked about Lee Corso. And, of course, tonight Trevor and Vince are going to have their show as well. So make sure that's the other channel that I own that we do more college football talk, CFB Nation. So if you're not subscribed to that, make sure that you are.
Get over to CFB Nation. Also, make sure you tune in to IB Nation Sports Beat tonight. They're rounding out the week with We In, We Out, and it should be a fun one considering Notre Dame kicks off their 2025 season on Sunday night. Before you guys head out of here today, please be sure to hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel as well as the CFB Nation channel. Be sure to hit that notification bell to make sure that you know whenever we go live here. I believe, Brian, you guys RTCF tomorrow?
Mm-hmm. Yep, me and Sean.
Brian and Sean,
1 o'clock
live tomorrow at 1 p.m. for RTCF. And then, as always, make sure that at any point in time today, make sure you subscribe to the premium message boards at irishbreakdown.com. Brian's going to have some awesome video breakdowns coming out on the message boards over the next couple days. Then a lot following up the Notre Dame and Miami game. So until next time, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.